Hey folks, Masako X here. Now, the relationship between Gine and Bardock is something that is often talked about and theorized, but never really explored in the official story, for obvious reasons, one being Toriyama's not really that good at it. Dragon Ball Minus did touch upon the notion that their relationship was different from other Saiyans in some way, but didn't go any further than them being friendly. Well, let's fix that, shall we? In this little bonus video to help tide you over on a Monday morning. So Masako, how did this idea come about? Well, it's all to do with my readings of Megane-chan 720's novelization of the Gine story, the playlist you can check out up top, and her adding a note to the bottom of chapter 25 to me, reminding me that I promised to touch upon their relationship prior to the planet exploding. And of course in typical "but Masako" format. Good point. We're going back to the first part and reminding you how this iteration of Gine's story began, and then going back a little further. You see, we have the Bardock special and then Dragon Ball Minus. Like I talked about in that first iteration of this What If, instead of choosing one story over the other, we instead at the start of this adventure meld the two together so that we had something that was of our own, that could include Gine, as well as the original Bardock from the 1990 special, the one that is most synonymous with the character, and I think everyone prefers. I mean, I'm not saying that the Broly or Minus version is bad or anything, it's just very, very different is all. In any case, this video is to go before the first part of this What If, something we really haven't done before, and something I am really keen to try out for some of the bigger What Ifs, to try and add some world building and setting the scene a little more than I could do normally. It's going to be really nice to go to town with this notion of Gine and Bardock's relationship in this What If universe. So let's go. Part 0 of this long legacy. In the world of the Saiyans, when it comes to the rank and file, society is pretty equitable. So long as you are strong and you can contribute to the working day of a typical Saiyan, then you are welcomed, you're part of the pack. It's like how we discussed in our Zenkai discussion from the other day. Saiyans that aren't part of the royal family would, like typical Neanderthals, have a pack mentality and aid each other in their conquest or goal so that everybody would prosper in the long run. However, there was a situation that caused a certain thing to be disrupted. There was a Saiyan out of place and causing their pack to struggle more than usual, that Saiyan being Gine. She had been assigned by the higher-ups to a duty with a pack of Saiyans to aid her in getting stronger, or to provide support in their conquest, or simply to just get rid of her. From the edict of King Vegeta's underlings, Gine had been put in the care of Bardock's battalion without him having a say. Despite his lack of royal essence, Bardock had shown quite a lot of potential and caught the attention of Cole's administrative team, and then later Frieza's. They deemed him effective and had fast-tracked him to the top, despite protests from the traditional Elder Saiyan elites that this Bardock had no business being here. He was a low-class born... Ugh. He wasn't an elite, and nor did he show promise when he first showed up. But orders were orders, and the father of Goku was, reluctantly, granted mid-class status, and leader of one of Frieza's Saiyan squads. Well, it turned out to be Bardock's Planet Elite Force. Then the results spoke for themselves, and loud protests from the elder elites became quiet grumbles of resentment behind closed doors. Either way, Bardock didn't care about what some old men had to say. He just wanted to do what he was born to do, and that was to fight, even if it was for somebody else and less about his own personal satisfaction. However, there was something really odd. This new recruit in Gine was proving to be somewhat of an oddity. She was quite weak for a Saiyan, being charged for this kind of work. Her power level was about 400, 500, far lower than anyone else in his posse. Even the likes of Leek, that's from Minus by the way, was stronger than her. And Seripa, that's Farsha, was very keen to rag on her for being inadequate and took every single opportunity she could to trip Gine up whenever Bardock wasn't looking, thinking that he wouldn't notice. As far as she was concerned, Bardock was too forgiving and tolerant. But the truth of the matter was that his Planet Elite Force was all about teamwork and not trying to scupper each other. Bickering had no place in it. Clearly, Seripa forgot that. Toma, Bardock's second, was very quick to put an end to Seripa's antics overtly, to which the Saiyan was angry about. She then hatched a plan to get rid of this liability for good. As time progressed, Bardock started to feel things for this one. It was weird. He had courted with Saiyan women before, but those were casual couplings, more like flings instead of romances. I mean, romance had no place in Saiyan society, as conflict would spell disaster and demoralize all those who were affected by it. It was a complete waste of time. And this got under Bardock's skin, and he hated this feeling. It was affecting his game, but he didn't blame Gine for this. One night, it came into sharp relief for Bardock. On one particular mission, which had seen Gine hurt quite badly, she had had enough. She was able to heal herself up enough to head back to her pod under the cover of darkness whilst the rest of them were asleep. However, when she got to her pod, about to leave, someone was waiting for her there. Oh great, Seripa there to cause her grief as always? No, it was Bardock. Hey, I wouldn't get in this if I were you. Gine stopped and gasped. If you're trying to convince me to stay and fight, you can save it. I'm done with being on the front line. I'm not cut out for this. I know, Bardock smirked. I ain't trying to keep you here. If you want to go, go. I mean, you're right. This isn't the place for you. Gine was confused. Why was Bardock being so understanding? And why was his tone not angry, but suave? Why are you here then? She was trying to hide her reddening cheeks from him, but was failing terribly. Your pod's been tampered with. Take Seripa's instead. He gestures over to another pod before pointing out a hastily screwed on panel on the side of Gine's craft. Seriously? She was willing to go that far to get rid of me? Yep, laughed Bardock. Why are you finding this funny, Bardock? This isn't funny. It's cruel, simpered Gine. Bardock's expression changed from joviality to seriousness in a second. You're right, it isn't. It's just confirming what I suspected. I know my squad inside and out, and this is proof positive that you aren't suited for this. I don't want to see you distracting the other team members, but I also don't want to see you get hurt because of it. Gine gasped. This is quite the admission for a Saiyan. He cared about her safety in some way? You should go home, take up something else, and hey, when I get back, I'll come find you. He pats Seripa's pod, and then walks away without saying another word. Gine is left there, stunned. He kept his word. When the squad got back and Seripa got a dressing down for her sabotage attempt, Bardock found Gine and the two of them got to know each other some more. Now, this isn't your Earthling-type romance thing. Like I said, Saiyans don't do that sort of thing. Bardock is not some kind of Casanova person. He's a Saiyan grunt. But he was far better than your typical one, though. There was something different about him, and the two were drawn to each other. The two of them would hang out together. He barging into her place of work in the meatery and just whisking her away, despite her boss's protests. He just simply ignored them. His reputation was getting greater and greater by the day, and he was reveling in this. He could throw his weight around because, hey, he was Bardock. And oh yeah, he thought Gine was pretty hot too. I mean, that helped. He wasn't all that keen on her being weak and all and being kind of soft, but in the confines of planet Vegeta, it wasn't really that much of an issue. It was strange of him to admit this. She was on paper a disgrace to the Saiyans, and most of the fighting examples exclaimed that to Bardock. They were confused as to why he was interested in her. Why are you hooking up with a puny waif? Surely that Seripa chick is more your style. Let's just say the complaints to Bardock's face stopped not long after that. It soon became background noise, far from Bardock's ears. Gine was very overwhelmed by all this attention, this level of defense from a very powerful fighter. One day, she asked him directly why he was continuing to fight her corner, despite him having no need to, her being nothing more than a preparer of food, one of the more menial tasks a Saiyan could do. Simple, because I want to. Gine found this simple sentence extremely sensual. Don't get me wrong, you're nothing like a Saiyan, really. Quite frankly, you get on my nerves sometimes with your meek attitude. You know what? I don't give a damn. You're far less annoying than those other Saiyans. I can't stand being in those mess halls anymore. It's all the same stuff being said over and over. Planets, fighting, conquests, of all sorts. I've heard it all before. Let's just say that I find you interesting. Bardock said this without looking at Gine, and just as well he didn't. He would have just been proven positive of her being meek. She was beet red right now. Later that night, they consummated that relationship for the first time. And I honestly wish I could describe it more, but you know, hashtag YT being YT. Maybe I'll find another outlet for it as a supplemental. What I can tell you now though, is that what Gine felt. Something that she hadn't felt for a very long time. Not since she was a young girl. Safety. She felt safe with Bardock. nobody would confront her for being weak anymore. As far as they were concerned, she was Bardock's woman, and that status was confirmed when it became clear that she was pregnant. As we know from Minus, Saiyan babies are placed in nursing capsules instead of being born au naturel. That whole thing, oh, that was in the past, that was archaic, far too laborious, and it took female Saiyans away from the battlefield. It's too much of a liability. So, thanks to the introduction of Cold Force tech, her unborn child was carefully placed in a capsule and soon developed into a healthy baby boy, what we know as Raditz. She sort of lamented this new advancement in technology. She kind of wanted to carry a child herself and blossom with radiance, feeling the beginning of a new life inside of her. Really show that she was loved by someone. Bardock, well, okay, I say loved. I mean as much love as she can get from a Saiyan, but oh well. Gine settled for the fact that she was pleased to be able to love a child with all of her heart. Having said that, it soon became clear that Bardock's reservations with Gine's meekness also extended to Raditz. Over the years, it became clear that Raditz wasn't destined to break through the ranks into the realms of the elites like he thought he would, especially when he got given the status himself. Bardock may have been different in some aspects to a typical Saiyan, but he was still a traditionalist in terms of his progeny. Raditz was okay, nothing special, and that disappointed him. Gine started to see less and less of Bardock and spent most of her time with her son, as he grew into a bit of an eccentric, pompous boy, but he was also cautious, and it showed promise at the same time in the right circumstance when she thought about it. He was really resourceful. He might not be a team leader in the future, but he could definitely prove useful in a crunch. But this didn't mean that Bardock abandoned Gine. He was still attracted to her, and they soon had another kid, who we know as Goku, but was given the name Kakarot, of course. Bardock thought that, oh, Raditz was an anomaly. Surely this next Frog would be stronger. No, he was even weaker. A power level of 2? Gine may have been alluring to him, and something a refreshing change of pace from a typical Saiyan, but when it came to siring offspring, she was no good. He felt conflicted now, and Gine could sense this. She tried to make him feel better, but one day, it proved too much. Bardock lashed out at her for being a waste of time, a waste of space, and calling her name after name after name, all of them vicious. He was taking his anger out on her, and she took it. She just stood there and took it, even though inside she was crumbling, her world falling apart. She remained steadfast though and true to herself. After all, it's what Bardock had been teaching her to do all this time, knowing her strengths and standing proud in what she believed in. She learnt well, and in the midst of her own idol going berserk on her, she didn't budge. It was only after he left and went on that fateful trip to Kanassa that she buckled, in private, with dignity.
"Mum, why are you crying?" said a concerned Raditz. "Is this about Kakarot?"
Gine wiped her tears and hugged Raditz, who was puzzled. No, he's just mad about work.
"I don't blame him. Things have been rather bad since Frieza took over. When I'm big and strong like father, I will give that oath a piece of my mind and do our race proud."
This said from a blusterous Raditz, which made Gine laugh. She quite frankly needed it. That was the last time she saw Bardock for a while, but a little bit of him was still there, in her sons. It was some kind of comfort. Now we get to where part 1 begins, but with some added context. Bardock buried himself into his team, trying to forget about his disappointing squirts and disappointing partner. And hey, with the sudden acquisition of clairvoyance, that was just the ticket. He was too wrapped up in trying to piece together the visions in his mind to care about anything else. And it also soon became clear that Frieza was up to something, and that his people were in danger. When he returned, he knew that that time was fast approaching, and his warnings needed to be heard, if anyone would listen. Which they didn't. Despite his reputation being impressive, complacency and decadence had clouded his kin, just what Frieza wanted. They dubbed him mad, and wouldn't listen to him at all. Now, Gine had just so happened to have been at the entrance to the mess hall, but Bardock had run right past her without even noticing that she was there. When he exited, he did notice. She called out to him and asked what had happened. "Oh, it's you. Like you care. Like anyone would care." "Bardock, tell me, what's going on?" He calms down in that second. Despite him seeing a weakling, her soothing eyes were enough to temper him still, just for a moment, to try and explain. She accepted it. "What? You believe me?" Gine nods. "Why wouldn't I? You're the greatest Saiyan I know. If you're worried about something, it must be serious." Bardock was floored. He had spurned Gine for months now, and in this moment, despite him distancing himself from her, she stood by him. Normally a Saiyan would have just moved on to another suitor or mate, but this one, his wild expression then turned solemn. This is the end of us. Those people in there aren't worthy of being called Saiyans. They've grown soft and complicit. They think they're untouchable. And soon, he clenches his fist. They will pay for that. What do you need me to do, Bardock? I can fight if you need me to, Gine said with trepidation. Bardock then turned to her with a piercing look. No, you'd be killed in an instant. He thinks for a second. Where are the boys? Raditz is off-world with Prince Vegeta's men, and Kakarot is still in his capsule. Still? He should have been out of there weeks ago. I should have known. He is too weak. But there's not enough time. Get Kakarot out of here. He should have had some chance of surviving off-world. Gine nods and runs back to their dwelling. One more thing. Find yourself somewhere to hide. It's gonna get ugly. Without another word, he disappears from view. She never saw him again. Bardock then takes his leave and heads up to Frieza's ship doing his whole Frieza! Frieza! thing with all the soldiers and stuff like that. It looks really cool. Gine is hurrying up towards where the pods are kept because she would know about this because Bardock would keep on talking about it because like, that guy, he doesn't know how to handle a pod. Oh, that kind of thing. Oh my god, that guy's a moron. She makes it to where the pods are kept undetected and places Kakarot deep inside one of the pods. And this is where things start to get really difficult, because Gine is probably the sweetest Saiyan out there. Right now, she is absolutely broken. This is something that she cannot bear to deal with. She had to say goodbye to Raditz, she now has to say goodbye to Kakarot too, and probably will never see him again. This is the point where she's like, looking down at the baby Kakarot, who's starting to cry. She's starting to cry. It's all becoming too much for her right now, and it's just like, I can imagine she's just like there. You know that scene in Kung Fu Panda when Po's mother has to like give him away and then run off like that? It's kind of like that. Like, she doesn't want to do this. Kakarot's just flailing his arms around and then accidentally presses the door lock button, which sends the pod door, which goes, and then knocks Gine on the butt. She's then flung into the pod with Kakarot, so it's all complete jumble, and the two of them then go automatic things right there. So, as you can tell, Gine and Kakarot are now inside a pod, heading towards Earth and away from the carnage. That moment of hesitation has proved absolutely critical for this story, and has actually made sure that the successes of Bardock's family line continues to be strong. The pair fall into a deep and satisfying sleep, cradled in each other's arms. Mother and child are still together. We cut to many days later, and the pod has crash-landed near Mount Paozu on planet Earth, which incidentally is not too far away from the home of Grandpa Gohan. On his walk, Gohan comes across a massive crater where there wasn't one before. With of course his great martial arts knowledge under the tutelage of Master Roshi, he tries to sense if anything suspicious is going on around here. The door incidentally is open. So he looks inside and sees all this technical mumbo-jumbo that he doesn't really understand, but then he can sense something rummaging in the bushes above. He looks up and sees a tail poking out of the top, which is hurriedly put inside. Obviously, a curious little Kakarot poking his butt in the air. He then uses his stick to just poke it a little bit. It becomes absolutely frazzled. There's a baby's cry. Gine launches out of the bush and tries to punch Gohan in retaliation, but then Gohan's, he absolutely sees it coming, and Gine just falls down face flat on her chest and just like, realizing her mistake, she looks back up, takes a look at Gohan, and just decides the situation, the best thing to do is try and flee. Gohan looks kind of puzzled, as in like he's saying, well, that was a thing. He looks down at the pod, shrugs, and then decides to walk home. She hasn't gotten really far with Kakarot. They are both dazed on a new world and really hungry. Try and at least follow the old man. Maybe he's going to a town or something. There might be places where I can get something to eat and Kakarot can be satiated. I don't know, that's the only thing I can think of right now. Sure enough, Gine's able to follow Gohan back to his house. He hasn't gotten very far because remember, he's an old man, he's taking his time, he doesn't have to run. He opens the door, goes inside and cooks himself up some lunch. And it turns out to be a very good lunch because Gine can smell it. It smells absolutely delicious, something really unusual. A Saiyan's stomach can only take so much temptation, and Gine's temptation has broken. So in a comedic fashion, Gine just knocks the door down and goes like, "Where's the food?" Of course, Gohan is shocked as it's like, oh my. But then realizes it's the young girl that he saw earlier, along with the baby. he relaxes and just says, come in, you must be really starving. Are you two alright? Why don't you just, come on, sit down. When he gets a closer look at the two, he just thinks something's really weird here. A tail? A lady? Space armor? That pod there? What's going on? Kakarot's crying even louder with hunger, so Gohan's best bet, get lunch done quick. She can see over on the table on the other side of their room is a massive piping hot spread. There's soup, there's bread, there's a little meat there. Oh, it's a lovely smorgasbord. She then spots Gohan looking at them. He motions to the food as in going, go, eat up. And you don't gotta tell a Saiyan twice. Once Gine's had her fill and Kakarot's been able to get back to sleep, much more comfortably this time, she starts to talk to Gohan, albeit a little bit hesitantly. And the one biggest thing that we can take away from all of this is that Kakarot is always referred to as Kakarot. Goku, the name Goku, never comes up because Gohan knows his name already. He already knows of his Saiyan origin, so the fact that Gine and Goku... Sorry, you forget to say Goku sometimes. The fact that Gine and Kakarot are Saiyans is second nature. Everyone knows. There's no mystery here. This is something else. He's absolutely fascinated by all of this. He's not going to cast them out. He's like, oh wow, oh my goodness, this is just so amazing. A fantastic thing that's arrived at my doorstep. But then Gohan does start to get a little bit concerned when he finds out that most Saiyans are brutes. He asks them if they're brutes too, but Gine assures him that they're not like normal Saiyans, and they really aren't. And so it's settled. Kakarot and Gine begin to spend a life with Grandpa Gohan in the woods near Mount Paozu. And another big thing that we can take away from this is because Grandpa Gohan's so aware of the Saiyan origins, the tail, the big great ape thing, he would actually survive to the modern day. He wouldn't die at the foot of Goku going on a rampage like in the original story. Kakarot would be much more controllable thanks to Gine's presence. Gine would tell Gohan to make sure that Kakarot wouldn't go outside in the dead of night when there's a full moon because it would cause absolute bedlam. But yeah, boys will be boys and they'll be curious boys at that, and it does happen. Gine could easily turn Uzara as well. She'd be in much more control, albeit not as elegantly as like Prince Vegeta or Raditz or something like that, but enough to make sure that she can rein Kakarot in. But apart from that, things would be relatively peaceful. And to try and combat the situation, Gohan allows Gine and Kakarot to borrow a couple of pairs of Roshi sunglasses whenever it's a little bit dark out and there's a full moon. They both try them on, and it's really cute to see Gine and little Kakarot wearing the glasses and they're looking at each other and they're laughing. Just that little cute moment. There'd be so many of those with that little family dynamic. Now the next question would be is what would happen to Kakarot's personality? Would he still become the person he is today? I think he would. He wouldn't need the head injury to do that. And why would that be exactly? Because nurturing is a very, very big influencer. Two calming influences can do a lot to a child, and therefore, the child will also become much calmer too. Kakarot turns out to still be the sweet boy that he is, and also really keen to fight. And luckily, he's got someone like Gohan to train him, and you know, Gine can throw a punch and stuff like that, and she would have some decent power. I'd say her power level may be roughly about like 500, which is immense for someone on Earth, but real weakling for a Saiyan, because Raditz was considered a weakling at 1000, and if Gine had half that, I mean, that's still pretty weedy, but here, it's going to be very convenient for the world of Dragon Ball, at least in the original series. And the fact that Gine's away from all those sweaty Saiyans and is now near the forest, living a peaceful life away from the likes of Lord Frieza, her family is mostly safe. She's worried about Raditz, of course she is, but at least Kakarot's okay and with her. But then again, she does miss her homeworld tremendously, and the fact that Bardock's no longer around. She did look up to him, but over time, she does begin to think that maybe he wasn't such a great guy after all. It's a very, very big moment of confliction for Gine. But no matter, the only thing that she can hope for right now is that she can fully integrate into society with Kakarot by her side, and that Lord Frieza never shows up on Earth. We now fast forward to age 750, and it's now time for Bulma to make her presence known. And would the 4-star ball still be there? Of course it would be. It's one of Gohan's ornaments, but it doesn't have the whole spirit thing in there. It's just a really cool looking ball thing, part of a legend. Looks really cool. It's a really good talking point for parties. Bulma, being the really presumptuous little girl she is, goes like, oh, you're taking me to your parents already? Oh my god, this is so sudden! But then Kakarot's just like, what? They just make really good lunch there. I think with two parental figures right there, Kakarot would be just told, you've got to be nice to girls. So when Bulma arrives at Kakarot's house, she is meted with the likes of Guinea and Gohan there, and the pair are really civilized and it's all really cordial, everyone's really nice, and Bulma's kind of surprised to see this really nice and mellow family out in the wilderness. Bulma then begins to explain that she came from Capsule Corporation and she's looking for Dragon Balls after finding out about it on the local news. As part of just like, oh, this fantastical legend, I wonder if anyone can find them. And now the weather. Guinea would be very suspicious about this and ask what she would actually want to wish for, and sure enough she says the lifetime supply of strawberries. But then Gohan's just saying, no, absolutely, take it. I've got no use for it, it's just gathering dust over there. I don't need it anymore. One condition there, young girl. If you actually manage to find all of these balls, just make sure to let me know, because I'd love to see if it was true. The conversation turns to Kakarot, who's been basically sitting there, eating his food and not really saying anything. And Guinea's thinking, well, if you're looking for these, Dragon Balls or stuff, maybe Kakarot can come with you, because he knows his way around the woods if they're around here. And then Kakarot's just like, really? Can I go on this adventure too? It's so cool! Kakarot needs some friends his age. He can't just keep hanging out with his mum and dad and stuff like that. It's good bonding and social skills, and that's what Guinea wants, to everyone fully integrate into society. Gohan can sense that Bulma's intentions, albeit a little bit selfish, they're pure, they're good. She's a good egg, really. She's not doing this for evil intent. She's just being a silly little girl, but she's having fun. And Kakarot will be able to protect her. So where does Guinea stack up in all of this? Well, not really much at all, because remember the Emperor Pilaf saga, it was mainly just introducing the basic characters, Kakarot, Bulma, Yamcha, etc. I guess the only real difference here is that the young Saiyan is slightly stronger than he is in the original story, because remember, Guinea may be weak for the typical Saiyan, but in terms of an Earthling's power, she's an absolute beast! She just doesn't want to show it. She is more than powerful enough to take on Kakarot sparring with her every now and again. Just because she doesn't want to fight, she's not going to deny that pleasure from her son. And I guess the only other difference in this arc worth mentioning is that of what happens at Fire Mountain. Kakarot will be talking to Chi-Chi and mention that he has a grandpa and a mother. After further prying and the gang have just suddenly disappeared, I'm pretty sure that Chi-Chi would then tell her father, the Ox King, that Kakarot, the young man that she wants to marry, has a single mother. He too is single because his wife died when Chi-Chi was a young baby, so you might want to get in there. Chi-Chi might say, oh, this might be really cute for you, and Ox King will be, I think he'd be at least a little bit interested in at least meeting Guinea eventually. After beating Pilaf and the gang and parting company with Bulma and Yamcha and Oolong and whatnot, Kakarot would then return home to tell Gohan and Guinea everything about his fantastic adventure, telling Gohan how much stronger he'd gotten, yet also admitting the fact that he had gone Ozaru. Guinea would just simply hug him and tell him, it's okay, you didn't mean to, and ultimately, it actually saved him and his friends, so maybe this was a blessing in disguise. So remember that Gohan was curious about the Dragon Balls and whether they were a legend or not? Well, Kakarot would also say that, yeah, it's indeed true, they do grant wishes. Gohan would be like, oh, really? Well, what did you wish for, dear boy?
Panties.
What?
Panties. Oolong said that he wanted panties, so he got it.
Huh. Sounds like Roshi all over again. Kakarot would then talk about the Ox King and ask whether Gohan knows about him. And of course he does. They trained together a long time ago under Master Roshi. The boy would then turn to his mother and say, quite bluntly, because Kakarot does do that,
He's single, by the way, Mom.
And understandably, Guinea would be blushing uncontrollably and say,
Thank you, Kakarot, sweetie.
Fast forward to the 21st World Martial Arts Tournament, and the same thing happens again. The events stay relatively the same, except for the fact that Kakarot's fight with Jackie Chun is a lot more closer than it was in the original story. Now you might be thinking the Red Ribbon Army is pretty much the same thing. Well, it does start a little differently. Instead of Kakarot going out on a specific adventure to find the 4-star Dragon Ball, because, Grandpa Soul's in there and stuff, Kakarot is simply flying around on the Flying Nimbus just for the hell of it, because now that he's out there and gotten a taste for the world, he wants to go and explore more of it, and Gohan and Guinea are more than happy for him to do that. He's got the Nimbus, he's more than capable of taking care of himself, he's stronger than pretty much anyone else on the planet, really. It's only after bumping into Pilaf and then ultimately Colonel Silver that everything starts to coalesce with the original timeline again. Next up is the assault on Muscle Tower, and that plays out the same again, only this time the fight between Kakarot and Major Metallitron is a lot less one-sided. The resurrection of Upa's father, Bora, carries on as per usual. Now you might be thinking that, oh, Dragon Ball's just going to play out the same. Well, I think the next turning point is going to be the King Piccolo saga. This is the first time in Dragon Ball's history that the entire planet is at risk, and this is something that Guinea hoped would never happen. She can't just hide in the forest with Gohan anymore. Why is that? Well, for starters, she's at the World Martial Arts Tournament already. She's already in the thick of it. Before Krillin is murdered, she and Gohan and the rest of the gang are celebrating Tenshin Han's victory at the tournament. The death of Kakarot's best friend, though, is enough to bring everyone to tears. From there, Kakarot's assault on Tambourine, the death of Piccolo's children, the near victory of King Piccolo over Goku the first time round, pretty much play out the same, including the time when Roshi lured out King Piccolo in order to use the Mafuba. This time though, Roshi's not doing this alone. He is fighting alongside Grandpa Gohan as well as Guinea. What? Masako, I thought you said Guinea didn't want to fight. Well, that is true, but I guess in this situation, when the world's at stake, she doesn't really have much of a choice. She's not gonna let this upstart take away everything that she holds dear. This life that she has right now means so much more than the one she had before. Back on planet Vegeta, she was branded a weakling and good for nothing other than just cooking. Here, she's got a family, she's got friends, and her little son is just so daft and goofy, but so happy. It's just, yeah, she is fighting for just what she loves. So I can imagine that Roshi's about to square up with Piccolo, but Guinea would then say, let me do it. And Roshi's going, are you sure? But Guinea tells them to get on with the Mafuba thing and charge it up and get it ready. She will manage to distract Piccolo. Speaking of which, the king is bemused as to why a lowly woman would be doing the work of a man. Why are these two masters doing nothing against me, but then this little wench is thinking that she can take on the mighty King Piccolo? But his derision is swiftly silenced when basically Guinea wails on him. Remember in part 1 that I said Guinea's power level was probably around 500? That is really weak for a Saiyan, because Raditz at 1200 was branded as a weakling. If Guinea was even lower than that, then oh boy. In King Piccolo's present state, he hasn't actually become young again. He is less than half of that power. King Piccolo is on the brink of death. He does not know what to do. But then he finds out that this person is the mother of the child that he basically left for dead. He could use that to his advantage. He decides to use emotional tactics to try and even out the playing field. Guinea doesn't believe this for a second though. Go on. Try and find him. I know you can do it. Roshi would have taught you that. She tries to sense for Kakarot's presence, but she can't sense anything. Now remember, Kakarot's still alive, but he's barely hanging on and currently being transported to Korin's Tower with Yajirobe. But basically the power signature is basically non-existent. Guinea is then distracted and King Piccolo goes on the offense. However, all of this time was more than enough for Gohan and Roshi to prepare the Mafuba technique. And just when Piccolo thinks he's about to deal some kind of devastating blow, he's caught up in it. The technique goes off without a hitch, Roshi stays alive and is uninjured, and everybody can basically go home for tea. Why is that, Masako? Well, Roshi didn't have to fight Piccolo. He has more energy, so he can just about hang on there. And he does have Gohan there to back him up. As that fight's going on, Kakarot is up at Korin's Tower, receiving some Senzu Beans and receiving the Ultra Divine Water, because remember, in the manga, he doesn't actually go through all of those trials, he's basically just given the water immediately. The Saiyan child is ready to go down and take on King Piccolo a second time, but Korin just goes, now wait a second there, bub. I can sense something. Well, looks like your dame of a mother managed to take care of King Piccolo for you, pal. Kakarot is left stunned. He has no idea how his own mother managed to take on King Piccolo when he could barely do anything. It doesn't occur to him that his own mother is actually stronger than him because she's never really exhibited all that much strength, because there was no need to. As the rest of the gang gather the Dragon Balls and wish back anyone that was affected by King Piccolo and his children, Guinea has to come to terms with something. That complete life of peace and not having to think about fighting that she wanted oh so much, she's gonna have to make some compromises, I'm afraid. Despite her doubts, she's basically gonna have to be Earth's protector. Who'da thunk it, eh? Roshi and Gohan are still quite surprised by the terms of events, but they are very thankful for her support. Kakarot then wants Gine to teach him everything that she knows, and in return, he will teach her the Kamehameha. She just finds this all rather sweet and goes, yeah, sure honey, sure darling. She's still a little overwhelmed by the entire proceedings, but is just glad that her son is now alive and well. Once he finds the power pole, they both get up on Nimbus and then head up to Korin's tower. He wants Korin to train the pair of them, but he's simply not strong enough anymore.
Nah pals, you basically gotta go up a little higher.
In return, Kami offers them anything that they desire. Kakarot immediately jumps up and says,
I want to train with you, and so does my mom.
But before that Gine can actually have a rebuttal, Kami just goes, ah, I see. Very well. Gine is still a little bit apprehensive, but remembering the wicked face of King Piccolo in her mind, she decides to accept the challenge and ultimately trains with her son. Very good bonding time. 3 years pass and Kakarot is now an adult. He and Gine are now much stronger than they were before the 3 years began. Thanks to the power of Senzu Bean's Zenkai boost, as well as the fact that basically it's two Saiyans fighting each other, Gine has broken through the 1000 power barrier and Kakarot is not far behind. Keen to test his power, Kakarot suggests that they go to the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament and see how well they could do, ultimately maybe fighting in the final together. But Gine doesn't want that. She did not get all of this power to then just show it off to the world. She would only want to use it as a last resort. Kakarot? Yeah, absolutely. He can do what he wants. And ultimately, I think we know he is going to dominate because without Piccolo Jr. there, because King Piccolo never spouted an egg, it's going to be quite obvious who's going to win. Instead, the final would actually be between Kakarot and Hiro, Kami's disguise. I think this would be a great fight, acting as some kind of rites of passage for the young Saiyan, to show how far he'd come, and basically, Kami can just be all calm about this, there's no endangerment, this is just a friendly little spar and actually getting to be down on planet Earth for once. Be that as it may, Kakarot would still go on to win the championship at his 3rd attempt. He would then go on to marry Chi-Chi and Gine would finally meet the Ox King. Do they get hitched though? I don't think so. Well, I don't think Gine's the kind of person that would fall in love so readily. And remember, Saiyans have a very weird concept of love. And I imagine that the Ox King would be very reluctant to let the past go and completely forget about his wife from all of those years ago. Their kids are actually getting married anyway, so if they got married too, nah, I think we should leave that untouched. They'd be good friends though. 5 years later, after the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament, the Earth has been at peace for quite some time. Gine and Kakarot have been quietly practicing with Gohan, but for the most part, they've been just chilling out. Now that Chi-Chi's around, little Gohan's there, it's a really nice family union. Can you imagine the family portrait? It'd be so sweet. It's time for another Saiyan to arrive on Earth, and this one could tip the balance in some very big ways. This is of course Kakarot's brother, as well as Gine's firstborn, Raditz. He is simply here to cause havoc and bring his brother back to the fold, but he's not counting on what's about to happen next. Raditz senses 2 extremely high power levels around Kame House's location and is very keen to try and take them on. They're roughly about the same level as him. When he gets there, he is surprised and delighted to find his brother there and immediately wants to actually recruit him. But of course, Kakarot's simply unwilling to join him. But then, as this commotion's going on, Gine steps out asking what is all this fuss about and is then completely stunned. Right there. Right in front of her, she sees both her boys together for the first time in, like, over 20 years. Her eyes meet with Raditz's.
Mother?
Mother and son are locked eyes, standing deathly still, with Kakarot remaining entirely confused. Gine then explains to Kakarot, who is looking really puzzled, that this is his long-lost brother Raditz. Well, now found brother. Kakarot is now astounded and somewhat curious. He begins to walk around his brother, who is looking really confused as to why the Saiyan, instead of trying to attack, is just going like,
Huh, so you're my brother, huh?
Raditz is just standing there getting more and more bemused and also more and more angry. This is so un-Saiyan-like, asking questions instead of taking names. This is just not right. He wants to actually try and attack his brother to see what he can do, but he then remembers the power levels that were registered on his scouter earlier. They were around about the same as his, and he puts 2 and 2 together and just goes,
What? My mother and brother are the same power as me? Oh, this is not good for Raditz.
Remember, Raditz isn't your typical Saiyan. He is far more cautious, so he decides to wait it out and see how it goes. You would think that Raditz would be happy to see his mother alive after, what, maybe about 25 years of absence? But nope. He is absolutely livid. Why didn't she try to find him all of these years ago instead of just leaving him to be subjugated to so much embarrassing humility by Vegeta and Nappa? He wouldn't have had to be so subservient to Lord Frieza and just become a dog's body for two Saiyans who have no empire to rule over. What would Bardock think if he saw one of his sons being treated like a plaything by the prince? How humiliating. Gine apologizes, but then just states that by the time that she arrived on Earth, she was completely disorientated and thought that every single Saiyan died, that they were the only two left. She was weak, hungry, and carrying a baby. I think that's pretty troubling at the best of times. However, she is glad to see him alive and well and hopes that he can forgive her. However, it's not as easy as that. Raditz came to Earth to check on his younger brother and see whether he actually took over the populace, but clearly he hadn't. And also, he wasn't expecting to see two Saiyans, because remember, the Saiyan pods are usually classified for single occupancy, not two people. Well, technically one person and a baby. The others then begin to walk out, seeing what's going on because it's been a while since Kakarot and Gine exited, but then Gine tells them to go back inside. This is strictly a family matter. However, Raditz then spots Gohan and asks who that is. Kakarot then explains that this is little Gohan, named after his grandfather.
It's not a very Saiyan name, but it's good to know that the bloodline has been continued in some way.
This may be good for Raditz, but at the same time, his game plan has now been thrown out the window. Taking Kakarot by force is now out of the question. If he coerces Kakarot to join his side, he's not going to do it, and he might be taken out because Gine and Kakarot, together, could take him on. And if everybody else decided to join in, because their power levels aren't to be sniffed at, yeah, it's not going to look good for Raditz. At this point, Kakarot doesn't really see any problems and offers that Raditz should stay and actually get to know the family once more. You know, have a life. Raditz is completely surprised by this good nature. Really? They would take him in without question? Is this how Earthlings work? Live here? Without Frieza breathing down his neck? It must be said right now that there is a wry smile on the Elder Saiyan's face. He does contemplate the idea of actually having a normal existence. There are muscles being used on the Saiyan's face that have been rarely used. He doesn't often smile, especially these days. He begins to touch his face, feeling kind of embarrassed, but the legacy of his past is become all too clear for him when he actually touches his scouter. Yeah. He is kind of bound in a contract. If he decided to bail and betray both Vegeta and Frieza, they would easily find him and destroy him. So what does he do? He can't stay here, he'd be endangering everybody. But he can't take Kakarot because he'd be endangering himself. And then of course there's his mother. His mind is now made up. He takes off his scouter and carefully covers the microphone piece with his finger, trying to hopefully block out any sound. He confesses to them that there are two stronger Saiyans out there. More Saiyans survived the explosion and were off-world. He doesn't want to drag his now existing family into this whole matter because this prince would gladly take out his frustration and use his royal title, having realized there are more Saiyans about. He comes clean with Kakarot, saying that his real intention was to come and take him to join Frieza's forces, but that ain't gonna happen now. He has no other choice. He can't return to Lord Frieza empty-handed because he would kill him. Because now, all that Raditz can do is to go dark. Gine suddenly begins to well up and walks over to her firstborn and places her hands over his face in a maternal manner. It's quite clear that Raditz is getting frustrated and saddened, but she shushes him softly and says that it's okay, she's just really relieved that he's alive. She always knew that he would survive somehow, that he had way more sense than his father. He's always thinking things through and planning ahead instead of being the average Saiyan brute. Raditz then retorts saying that he doesn't really deserve to live anymore. He's killed thousands of people at this point. He is not a clean soul. But then Gine shushes him again. He wasn't doing it out of malice. He was doing that under the orders of Lord Frieza. As long as he is aware that what he did was wrong, that's the main thing in her eyes. there is some good in him. She understands that he cannot stay, but so long as she knows that both of her boys are alive and well and fighting the greater fight, then that's all she cares about. She can now breathe easily for the first time in decades. He makes his goodbyes, but before he leaves, he turns around to his younger brother Kakarot and says this.
Brother, we will meet again. This isn't over.
He places the scouter back on his face and flies away. When the rest of the crew finally emerge from the house again, they begin to ask, who exactly was that guy? Kakarot is just standing there with pride and the prospect of a good fight.
Oh, him? That was my bro.
But clearly from the tone of Kakarot, because he doesn't often get serious, what just happened must have been pretty heavy. Kakarot's not usually this stoic, and at the same time, Guinea's trying to hold back the tears after realizing that now both her children are still in this world. When Raditz returns to his pod, he begins to realize that Vegeta's probably still listening in again, thinking that he chickened out. So Raditz comes up with a plan, and fakes his death. He punches himself in the chest with all of his strength and tries to mock himself. Go,
Oh no! I'm mortally injured! I'll curse you, Raditz, you moron!
He's trying to make clear that this injury is fatal. Raditz then takes off from the planet and heads out into the stars, crushing his scouter while still muttering that he's about to die. He's thinking that he's actually managed to fake his death and congratulates himself by patting himself on the back. Did it work? Did he manage to throw Vegeta off the scent? Well, he has no idea. But what he does know is that he can't go back now. He has to venture out into space and start his life again. This time though, as his own person, and knowing that his family is still alive. His little act worked and didn't work. Granted, Vegeta's not gonna go after Raditz, but the fact that he faked his death did not go unnoticed by Vegeta. He and Nappa talk about the matter and conclude that Raditz is the biggest moron of the highest order. But hey, he's weak, they don't care about him. But his brother and mother though?
That's quite interesting.
Maybe they could start a new colony and try and defeat Lord Frieza by regaining their numbers. This time with his strong blood being the backbone of it. As for Nappa, he's just keen to punch things.
Hey Vegeta, can we test that brat's strength? Yeah, sure thing, Nappa. I'm curious to see if Raditz's weakness runs in the family.
Back on Earth, Kakarot and Guinea look at each other and conclude that what Raditz said cannot be good. Stronger Saiyans? Prince Vegeta's still alive? Guinea knows all too well that Prince Vegeta and King Vegeta were cruel beings and totally merciless. They decide to take a trip to Kami's lookout and investigate the situation. How many more Saiyans are out there? Perhaps he would know. Unfortunately, Kami isn't that much clued in as they thought, but he can sense two dark forces heading towards Earth far across the galaxy. All this while consulting telepathically with the likes of King Kai. Based on their current speed, King Kai then tells Kami that they're probably going to be arriving on Earth in about 1 year's time. Kakarot thinks that, oh, this'll be easy. Kami can just train them like they did last time. It worked back then. However, Kami states that they are far beyond his power these days. There's not much more that he can teach them. Kami apologizes for wasting their time. Kakarot, still determined for a good fight, thinks, oh, don't worry, we'll train on our own, we'll figure it out. Kami watches them head out and begins to feel really guilty. Back on the ground, Kakarot and Guinea are beginning to figure out a plan with the rest of the Z-Fighters. Krillin, Yamcha and Tenshinhan aren't really sure what to do, but as they're trying to figure out some kind of plan, Kami communicates with Kakarot and Guinea telepathically. King Yama has granted special dispensation for mortals to head into the other world and be trained under the tutelage of King Kai. However, King Yama had to do so much paperwork that all he could do is bring one person to the other world who is alive. Kakarot looks sad because he wanted to train with his mother again. He'd been training for the longest time with her, it was fun. However, Guinea accepts this, stating that Kakarot is the future of Earth's protection. She will do what she can on Earth and train with the others. She tells Kakarot not to worry and that everything will be okay. Basically, in this situation, she's becoming the Piccolo. Kakarot begins to comprehend, nods, and hugs his mother. Later that day, Kakarot is ready to head to the lookout and then on to the other world to train. Guinea promises to do her best and train with the Z-Fighters, and just like that, Kami and Kakarot are out of here, ready to do battle, and Kakarot is ready to begin his training alone. When it comes to Kakarot's training in the other world, in comparison to the original story and scenario, it's pretty much the same for a long period. all the way up until he actually has to come back to Earth to fight the Saiyans. The only difference here is that the Dragon Balls don't have to be used for Kakarot. Why? Because he's still alive. What are the Dragon Balls going to be used for then? Well, that's a good question. Well, I think it might be time for Kami to step up to the plate. And why exactly is that, Masako, I hear you say? Well, I alluded to this in the last part, that Kami felt really bad and awful that he wasn't able to help train Gine and Kakarot. He'd taken a shining to them and really enjoyed training with them for years and years and years, and now he'd reached the point where they'd become way stronger than he is, and he couldn't help. So maybe this is the time to change that. He also felt really bad by having to bother the likes of King Yemmer and King Kai. He should have been able to do all of this by himself. Maybe if he was a bit younger and a bit more vibrant in his fighting style, he might be able to be of some use against the Saiyan threat that is incoming. No one's using the Dragon Balls at this point, so why doesn't he do just that? We have talked about this in one of our other What Ifs, the What If Nappa Turned Good series, where Kami actually becomes a younger version of himself and begins to train so he can actually keep up with the rest of the Z-Fighters and become a member of the Z-Fighters himself. So I thought it might be interesting to add that chestnut to this cornucopia of a story. As Gine is training with the others and getting quite distracted and really into it, no one's going to be bothering to check what Kami is up to, so he can freely go around the world collecting the Dragon Balls with Mr. Popo. But now he actually has this younger body. What does he do with it? How does he train? Does he go to the others and train with them? No. The Room of Spirit and Time. Yes, I know it was a retcon/MacGuffin that was introduced or reintroduced in the Cell Saga, but it does have a place in the lore of the Lookout. In that arc, Goku explained that during his time with Kami training, he actually went in the Room of Spirit and Time, but he couldn't handle more than a month inside because he kind of went stir crazy and couldn't cope. The question is though, would he share this information with the others? Hard to say. He'll figure it out once he's actually been inside it for a year. Meanwhile, we've got to talk about Gohan. Since his place in the story is a lot more vague than the original story, given the fact that we have not seen his rage boost because Raditz didn't kidnap him or anything, it's because of Gine that he still remains relevant to the story as a whole. Gine has come to recognize that Gohan does have potential after observing it in her own child. And Gine is a lot more perceptive than Kakarot. She would understand that Chi-Chi wouldn't want her son to be fighting with them. She offers a compromise to her. Let her train Gohan, and at the same time, she should train alongside them. Why would she want to train again? Those days of her were done. She got the guy, why does she need to keep on trying? If Chi-Chi chose to train with them, she could oversee Gohan's development, know what to do, know what not to do, and be a part of it, have things on her terms, and understand what's going on instead of being left in the dark. Despite appreciating Gine's offer, she remains unsure of it because she's fallen way behind the others. How on earth could she catch up in such a short space of time? That point though is left rather moot when it comes to Gine because she's had to deal with that conundrum pretty much for all her life. By being comparatively weak to pretty much every single Saiyan around her, she became a bit of a pariah, good for nothing except cooking for when the men and women came back from the battlefield. That's all she could do in the eyes of the other Saiyans, and that was totally unfair. She had no chance to show her full potential save for a brief spell with Bardock. Only Bardock could actually see any kind of potential in her. And now he's gone. But back then, she was okay with it. She wasn't really into fighting. But now that she's matured and embraced the fighting way, she could really see that her life was kind of sad. When the world was threatened by King Piccolo and Gine realized that she could actually do something about it, her life absolutely changed for the better. There is no shame in wanting to live a simple life free of fighting and danger. But if danger does actually decide to break down your door, you gotta step up. But you gotta also step up as a family and a team. And that's what Gine wants Chi-Chi to do. After getting Chi-Chi to agree to do this, they begin the training, the three of them. The family is starting to get stronger. But what's this? Another entity arrives at the training fields to help them. Someone they don't quite recognize but seems somewhat familiar. It's Kami, but a younger Kami. The Guardian does indeed confirm that it is him, and that he used the Dragon Balls to make himself younger, and that he's been training to be able to catch up to them and help them in the cause. But when it comes to the Room of Spirit and Time and whether he chooses to divulge that information, he chooses not to. He had forgotten how hard the Room of Spirit and Time was, how hard he made it for anyone who chose to enter it. They do not need people to have nervous breakdowns right before two murderous Saiyans are coming to destroy the planet. He needs everybody at maximum mental capacity. Say if Yamcha and Ten Shinhan went into the Room of Spirit and Time and they weren't prepared, they could easily be broken. Mortals, they can't really get any meaningful stuff out of it just yet. Even after regaining his youth and training with the Z-Fighters for the better part of a year, Kami still realizes that no matter what they're trying to do, the fight against the Saiyans is going to be extremely tough. They might not be able to do it, they're definitely going to need Kakarot for him to return as soon as possible. They're making good progress with Gine being there, but they still have to remember that Nappa is 3 or 4 times stronger than Piccolo was, who was the strongest at the time. Gine's probably around 2000 or something, so she's about half the power of Nappa. They gotta either fight together or not fight at all and just, die. And when the time comes and the Saiyans do arrive, they have still got to tackle each individual Cyberman on their own. Unfortunately, Tenshinhan and Chaozu still bite the dust, but Yamcha is able to survive. Why is that exactly? Because Gine has the advantage of knowing what Cybermen are. She would be able to shout, "Yamcha, duck!" and the Cybermen would just miss Yamcha. He is saved! Our savior gets to live for another day. However, all of this training isn't enough to save Kami. He still has to make some kind of sacrifice. When Nappa aims a mouth beam directly at Gohan, Chi-Chi instinctively gets in the way to defend it. But then at the same time, Kami then jumps in front of the pair of them and takes the full force of the hit. Kami felt absolutely dejected that despite all of his plans, all of his training, and now regaining his youth, it's still not enough to help protect them from the Saiyans. The only thing he can do now is to at least try and protect the mortals and buy enough time for Kakarot to return and defend the Earth. This was just an instinctive thing. He had no other option. Everybody is horrified when the Namekian lands on the ground, especially Gine. She spent a long time training with the Namekian Guardian, and this is going to be hitting very hard for her. Kami's life essence wisps away into the afterlife, and everyone is left stunned. And that comes as a massive loss as well, because there's no more Dragon Balls. No Kami, no balls. The balls are inert. But that's not exactly the most important issue right now. They've got to deal with an extremely angry Nappa who's coming at them with full force. But thankfully, Kakarot arrives just in time to be able to save everybody, with also a boosted power level after the old fabled one. It's over 11,000 this time. He makes light work of Nappa, and then Vegeta blasts away his minion as per usual. And when Kakarot finds out about Kami biting the dust all at the hands of Nappa, he is extremely furious, as Gine might have expected, and goes on the rampage, beginning his fight with Vegeta much quicker than usual. Gine gets up to join forces alongside her son, and they both face off against the prince. Gine isn't scared anymore. She thought she might be facing the prince, but she's not. What is Vegeta a prince of, really? All of his subjects are gone now. He wiped away his closest ally, Nappa. He's not there anymore. Who's going to defend him? This gives Gine the strength to fight alongside her son and her home. The prince initially wants to bargain with Gine and offers for her to be his Saiyan queen, just talking it all up, trying to be like, "Join me, and you can be my partner and queen as we start a new Saiyan colony. They could conquer worlds in the name of Lord Frieza, what do you say?" But Gine is absolutely not interested. I mean, Vegeta kind of saw right through it immediately. He just goes, "Oh well, worth a shot." The truth is, he doesn't care about restarting the Saiyan race anymore. He's kind of done with that. It was all just a stunt to try and get Gine to get less secure with herself. And besides, he wouldn't be able to quite shake off the idea that he's getting into bed with a low-class Saiyan. A low-class Saiyan cook of all people. And he says this in front of Gine. And ooh, you shouldn't have done that, Vegeta. You pressed the Gine button. Gine has had enough. Her hackles are raised and she's ready to prove what she can do. But one thing has become absolutely clear to herself right now. The power gap between herself and her son has become quite immense in the time that they've been training. She can feel it. He is far stronger now. He has actually managed to serve the purpose that she wanted. He is strong enough to be able to defend the world on his own. Her time is done. But, this Vegeta here, let's go out for one last ride together. Mother and son fighting as one last ride. And thanks to Kakarot's gain in power, thanks to the multiplier of the Kaioken, the 4x Kamehameha against Vegeta is actually a lot more powerful and is enough to really considerably injure Vegeta, cutting out quite a lot of the fight, or at least the second half of it. In fact, he's so injured that Vegeta isn't able to actually generate a Ki Blast of a moon to be able to become Ozaru. He scurries off to the pod as best as he can and vows to return and take out Kakarot. So okay, why did I cut this fight short exactly? Well, it's all down to pride. Vegeta was bested by a woman as well as a low-class Saiyan who had a power level of 2 at birth. How would he be able to live with himself? He is not done with them. He will come back and get stronger and wipe them off the face of this planet as well as the planet with it. The two of them got very lucky that Vegeta decided to scalp her right now. But also, Gine is fully aware that he could go back to Frieza's home world and alert Frieza the fact that she's alive and that Earth is ready and ripe for the taking. She knows that her time hidden away from the tyrant is over. Kakarot, who is now much more mobile than he is in the original story, congratulates his mother for being able to put up a really good fight alongside them. This was just like another one of their great adventures. He thinks there's nothing wrong, but Gine is fully aware that she kind of has to now step aside and let Kakarot take control. But oh dear, Kakarot does not take this well. Not at all. In fact, he actually breaks down into a pool of tears. This is not something that Kakarot wanted to hear, especially after such an immense and fantastic battle, the strongest and most intense they had yet. Kakarot has been training with his mother for as long as he can remember. He doesn't want this to end right now. It's now beginning to get interesting. Why stop? And Kakarot looked up to Gine. For all of his childhood and quite a bit of his early adulthood, she was the strongest person in his life. He was able to challenge himself against her. Kakarot asks Gine to not give up and keep on fighting, and just begging for her to not stop. Gine is kind of unsure about this, about whether she'd be able to actually keep up and actually catch up between the power gap between her and her son. But then Gohan and Chi-Chi step in and say that Gine should continue to fight with Kakarot. They should all do together. As a family, they would be stronger than ever, not divided. And this is something that not only pleases Gine, but Kakarot immensely. How ironic. Gine had spent most of her life trying to get away from all this training talk, but right now, she couldn't be any happier. Initially, Gine didn't want to go into space because it just reminded of all the bad memories of going around the stars, conquering planets before she then became a cook. But Kakarot is able to convince her to just say,
"Oh, come on, one last time, for all time's sake, I really want you here."
And besides, Dr. Brief says that they can get there in 6 days, do what they need to do, and come back. It's only for a couple of weeks, right? It is a training session, and sometimes they are fun with her son. In fact, nearly all the time they're fun, so alright, because it's you. She resolves her initial grievances and then goes along for the ride. Meanwhile, Vegeta returns to Frieza Planet 79 with his tail between his legs, as I said before. And he then recovers, as he does in the original story, and by the time he does, he finds out that Frieza is very displeased for the fact that he disobeyed any kind of orders and regulations that he'd given him. But at the same time, after finding out what happened on Earth and the fact that he came back defeated, it does make him feel very entertained. It does please the Emperor greatly. And then when Qui finds him and realizes that he still has his tail and that he didn't even get to go to his monkey form and he got beaten before he got the chance to do so, oh, that's just a riot. But Qui does deliver a message from Frieza and tells Vegeta, "Don't you leave the planet, you filthy monkey, because I want to come and talk to you." However, Vegeta has no intention of sticking around because somehow, much like in the original story, Vegeta managed to gain the ability to sense Ki. It's a little bit rusty, he hasn't got the hang of it yet, as seen in the Namek saga. He's a little bit rusty with it, he still sometimes needs a scouter, but he's getting it. He knows enough that there's something going on, some kind of power which is very, very familiar, moving in space, which seems a little odd. He can't tell who it is, but the overall signature, it reminds him of that little scout party back on Earth. When Qui takes his leave, Vegeta then finds an escape pod and then goes off in hot pursuit of Gohan, Bulma, Chi-Chi, Yamcha and the others. He's thinking that now he's had his little Zenkai boost, he'd be able to beat down those twerps for sure, because surely they wouldn't have been able to get much stronger in that short space of time, right? Knowing that this whole transgression could mean certain death for him, Vegeta is very careful to make sure that his power is suppressed, so that means no one on the Scouters will be able to see that it's him. It could at least buy him some time. And one important thing to note here is that Frieza and his forces aren't aware of the Dragon Balls just yet, so it means that at the moment, by the time the gang arrive on Namek, it's still a very peaceful place. By the time the gang arrive, they have, unbeknownst to them, a couple of days head start on Vegeta, so it means they can get started. They start off by going to nearby villages where they can sense Dragon Balls, and the gang and the families and the culture of all of Namek are a little bit more inclined to give Dragon Balls to these people because they don't look like a bunch of ne'er-do-wells. With Gohan and Krillin making one team, and Chi-Chi and Yamcha making the other, the two pairs are able to successfully gather Dragon Balls through polite requests and saying, don't worry, we're not going to be doing anything bad. All the while, Bulma is setting up camp in a nearby cave, as is in the original story. They still need to go and get the Dragon Ball from Lord Guru, who does unlock everybody's potential while he's there, because, you know,
he's a nice guy like that, at least in the original canon.
Meanwhile, Gine and Kakarot have taken off and they're starting to train in intense gravity, and they're struggling at first. Initially, Gine had the upper hand because, coming from Planet Vegeta, she was somewhat used to the 10 times gravity, but when the gravity starts to increase, the gap between the two starts to erode. By the time they start to train in the 100 times Earth gravity, they're kind of level pegging in terms of ability. It does mean that Kakarot has a genuinely good training partner, and it means that the training that they are able to do in those 6 days is very effective. In the original story, there was a 9 times multiplier from the moment that Goku left original planet Earth to then when he arrives on Namek when he fights the Ginyu Force. Here, I think it's going to be like an 11 times multiplier. All of these numbers coming from the multiple Daizenshuu as well as the Tree of Might movie pamphlet from back in the day. Kakarot could essentially beat the entirety of the Ginyu Force in his base form alone. Forget about Kaioken! All the while, Gine has been trying to come to terms with her place in the universe. Initially, she started off as a little scout working with Bardock, and then when she found out that she wasn't no good at that and she was derided for it, she became a cook, and that's all she thought she would be. But how things have changed in just a short couple of decades. Stronger than most Saiyans, in fact stronger than King Vegeta now at this point, the two of them, low-class Saiyans, have beaten the odds. Bardock could never have hoped to dream of this kind of power, and here's them, both of them. Kakarot with a power level of 2 at birth, her with a power level of 500 and destined to become a chef. Now they are having powers almost in the 6-figure sum. Her thoughts then also turn to Raditz, her eldest son. What is he up to now? Back in part 3, we talk about the fact that Raditz and Gine meet up back on Earth, and he goes off into the stars to try and find his own place in the universe, away from the Frieza Force. She keeps thinking about Raditz and hopes that he's okay, but one thing's for sure, she's glad that he's away from Frieza. One thing that Kakarot wanted to try and do while they were training is show to Gine the power of Kaioken, and hopefully she'd be able to do it too, because, like him, she's a Saiyan, and therefore she might be able to use the power as well. Gine tries to understand the Kaioken and learn the basic principles of it, but the problem is that they don't have enough time for her to be able to use effectively and reliably. Kakarot had up to almost a year to be able to try and figure it out, whereas Gine has maybe just a few days. It doesn't work like that, and I don't think Kakarot realizes this until Gine has to point it out. She does promise Kakarot that they will try and figure it out once they get home. Back on Namek, the gang are able to summon Porunga, the Dragon of Namek, thanks to the help of Dende, a young Namekian which was charged by the elder Mori to just help each other out and make sure that relations between all the other villages are even smoother. Porunga is summoned and says that they have 3 wishes, which is a pleasant surprise for the Earth crew. They thought they'd only get 1. The dragon does point out that he can only bring back 1 person at a time. First off, let's wish back Kami. Kami is then revived back on Earth, and therefore the Dragon Balls of Earth are revived too. They are reset. From there, they debate whether they should bring Kami to Namek, but then Yamcha points out that, are they sure they should do that? Because that would mean that the Earth is relatively defenseless, and also, they need to bring back Ten Shinhan and Chaozu, so if they got 3 wishes, then they can do that. That is very true. So therefore, with the 2 remaining wishes, they wish back Ten Shinhan and Chaozu. They can use the now revived Dragon Balls to wish anyone back that was killed by Vegeta and Nappa. With that, the dragon dissipates and the gang are about to take their leave, their job done. But, uh-oh. They gotta tackle the fact that Vegeta is right there, pissed off and ready for round 2. Frieza then gets word that sure enough, Vegeta did leave the planet and has taken a pod away to some kind of godforsaken planet. This annoys Frieza greatly, but he tries to keep his cool because, no matter, he doesn't feel it's any kind of a concern for him to go out there himself. So, he actually calls the Ginyu Force to go and take care of Vegeta. If he actually ends up to still be alive, he will then do the favor and finish the job himself. He passes the coordinates of Vegeta's escape pod to the Ginyu Force and they then set off for Namek. He also tells Zarbon and Dodoria to follow the Ginyu Force and help up with the cleanup effort because they know that, oh, if they're going to be fighting Vegeta, it's quite clear they're going to be leaving a mess. Also, it's worth trying to find out if that planet is indeed worth something, you know. Waste not, want not. By the time we get to Vegeta accosting the gang, they have no choice but to fight. Sure, their powers have increased thanks to Lord Guru, but Vegeta's managed to increase a little bit more in the same time, so they've not really gained much. The fight begins with Vegeta showing his skills despite being taken on by 4 people at the same time. Yes, their cumulative power may be better than Vegeta, but Vegeta knows how to divide and conquer. He's seen this before.
Oh, people trying to attack me at the same time. Oh, so amateur.
In fact, he's actually able to get some hits on the group, which starts to get them worried. Realizing that this can only end badly for them, Krillin then whips out a solar flare and tells everybody to escape back to the cave, hide their power levels, and regroup, and hopefully they can just stay put and just hopefully leave when Vegeta's not looking. Yes, that's true, they're safe now, but they are stuck. If they ever try so much as try and get a little bit off the ground, even in their ship, Vegeta will be able to just come up to them and blast them out of the sky. So now it's a game of cat and mouse, with Vegeta being the very vindictive cat, taking out his rage on village after village, destroying person after person. Where's Kakarot and that Saiyan woman? They're not there. Well, they might turn up sooner or later, so he can actually have his fill with them too. They are a team after all, so they're bound to turn up. That way he can take them all out, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and then go home in time for tea. Or hopefully try and survive. Despite Gine being in her late 40s, thanks to Saiyan biology, she's just as active and energetic as she was when she was in her late teens. Which, you know, means that they're in their fighting prime and they can just battle and battle and battle. Together with Kakarot, they're a very formidable team, and they just have gotten loads of gains in the week of their training. Now, in past what ifs that have included the trip to Namek, I've always stated that if Goku or Kakarot or whatever he's called right now had a training partner in some way, that the multiplier that Goku got would have been much higher than it was in the original story, and it was already quite impressive there on its own. I usually say it can increase about 9 or 10 times instead of like 7 or 8, and that is the case here, with Kakarot getting up to around 99,000, or may as well just be 100,000, and Gine getting to around 50,000. Now this isn't down to physical or narrative bias or anything. It's just simply the fact that Kakarot has just great genetics, because he's not only just got the sheer potential of Gine, he's also got the ability and determination from Bardock too. And Gine is plenty powerful herself. You know, she's a really strong character for this time in the story, and can easily provide assistance as well as collaboration with her son, because, you know, they got tag team stuff. But it is quite clear that her lust for battle isn't as great as her son's. Let's just be honest here. She never originally wanted to fight. She's now kind of just fulfilling a bargain and just, yeah, being nice to her son. Still though, there is one thing that hasn't escaped her thought, and that she's now 100 times stronger than she was when Planet Vegeta was destroyed. That's a pretty big milestone. In any case, Vegeta can sense their arrival. However, at this point in the story, his ability to sense energy is very, very basic. He wouldn't be able to tell about specific power levels or anything like that based on, you know, sensing energy, but he can sense people there. Luckily for him though, he is able to try and take out the weaker twerps, because with Gohan sensing his father and grandmother arriving, therefore he's far too excited and immediately just goes off to try and find them with everyone else in hot pursuit, and Vegeta's like,
Ah, yes, even gooder.
Vegeta finds the group in midair and then immediately kicks Gohan in the gut, and it says,
Oh yes, that felt good.
he is asserting his dominance and saying, well,
I'm even stronger than I was on Earth. You thought you could beat me then? You can't now.
they are toast to him. But he isn't aware of the fact that there's about to be an impending kick to his face from a rather irate grandmother, Gine. She then berates Vegeta for daring to harm her only grandchild, and then she realizes she kind of drop-kicked the Prince of all Saiyans. Oh my. Vegeta then gets back on his feet, or, in the air, and his eyes are transfixed on Kakarot. He is determined to right the wrong that happened on Earth and get his just desserts and show he is the Prince of all Saiyans and the strongest Saiyan around. He's going to do what he meant to do back on Earth, and that is to split and get mixed. You know how he never got to perform that moon trick? Well, he's getting to do it now. He calls upon the moon and he immediately transforms into the Great Ape to assert his dominance, because at this time Vegeta likes to do that. Now you're probably thinking, won't Gine go Great Ape as well? Ah, well, she's aware of this. And there is no need to do that, because right now, Vegeta isn't all that powerful even in this Great Ape form. All the while, Gine's just standing there, arms crossed with the Roshi glasses on, just thinking, This is just pitiful. Vegeta right now is filled with mirth at the fact that he's managed to get one over Kakarot and then just show Gine for what she really is, a true coward of a Saiyan. Not even worthy of being called a Saiyan. He is the true Saiyan elite, and he will stop at nothing for a great bat, and he's on the ground. Oh, Kaioken's a thing. Kaioken times 3 is enough to keep up with the brutish monkey, and Kaioken times 4? Oh boy! It's pretty much at this moment that it's all completely done, but we do get some exciting visuals of a tiny little Kakarot taking out this huge great ape. It's just really, really surreal. With Vegeta getting distracted and getting pounded, Krillin is now thinking, I should probably do something about this, and calls upon a Destructo Disc to cut off Vegeta's tail. Vegeta then transforms into his original base form, looking very battered, injured, and very, very flustered. This was all for nothing, and now he's damaged, and he's now screaming even more internally because the Ginyu Force are now in orbit and are about to land on the planet. He is done for. Yeah, his ability to sense energy may be limited, but he can definitely sense 5 specific somewhat strong powers are coming towards the planet, and that can only mean one thing. But he's gonna come up with a plan for right now. And this one means that he gets to save face in front of these buffoons. So he's just gonna think of something that will be a good bluff, and maybe he can get another escape plan, and then these fools can then face the meet against the Ginyu Force, and Vegeta can just escape. He tells the group that the Ginyu Force are with him, and that they're very keen to meet them and give him a good beating. Yeah, Gine ain't buying that. She knows about the Ginyu Force. She may have never met them specifically, but she's heard of them. Remember, she spent a lot of time with Bardock, and Bardock would have known about the Ginyu Force, so therefore she would too. This is when Gine's instincts as a Saiyan are really coming to the fore. She's feeling confident. She's been able to best the prince, so now, yeah, it's starting to get there. She's now slowly getting into it. Gine's calling out Vegeta, and Vegeta's having none of this, trying to slap her, and then just gets the hand met like this. You know, Gine in her Roshi glasses looking really badass. This is one of her best moments. Right now, she is staring daggers at Vegeta, giving a look that only a mother can give a very naughty child. The only time that Vegeta's ever seen this before is from his own mother, and this is a very, very disarming stare. And besides, he cannot afford to get even more injured with the Ginyu Force approaching. Sure enough, Ginyu arrives right there and then to collect his prize, take Vegeta back to Lord Frieza, and then, you know, the Lord can just do whatever he wants with him. But what's this? Vegeta managed to grab a bunch of allies in such a short space of time? Why, that's quite extraordinary, Vegeta. But no matter, we're going to be teaching these fools to try and aiding and abetting a very big fugitive of Frieza. Goldo, do your time thing. But before Goldo can get a word in, just Gine blasts him away, really on the high of besting Vegeta. Bardock talks. He would have been talking about the fact that that was just such a cheap trick. Okay, Recoome, support. Well, not really providing much support because then Kakarot jumps in with a Kaioken times 2. Oh dear, this is not good right now. Jace, but attack team now! Well, this is just meant for Gine and Kakarot because they've been training together since Kakarot was a boy. They proved to be a formidable team, and after a really flamboyant and really action-packed tag team battle, it is pretty much written in the sand that, you know, the Saiyans win. So in a space of just a few minutes, it's just Ginyu there, and he is absolutely shocked. But he does have one salvo left. He is still more powerful than that big Kakarot guy, so he's got that at least. Oh, Kaioken. A 360,000 power level. Okay, change now! Kakarot is taken by surprise, and Gine doesn't have any time to react to try and get this whole nugget of information that she has, and Ginyu manages to get the body change thing done successfully. So now it's Ginyu Kakarot versus Gine, and this is when Gine's thinking that I really should have learned the Kaioken, because the whole power gap thing, yeah, now there's a reason why it's so pronounced. Now, Ginyu may not be able to use Kakarot's Kaioken ability to the fullest, or barely at all, but the power gap just in base form alone is just about enough for him to have an advantage over Gine. Surely Gine is done for, but what's this? What's been left over? The moon. It's still there. Nobody ever thought to get rid of it. No other options. Gine takes off the glasses and looks up. She gives in to her great ape form. Before he can do anything, Gine just stomps Ginyu immediately. Gine right now is just full of regret. She did not want to do this. When he can get up, just about, he tries to use his body change ability to then swap into Gine Great Ape form. But remember, Kakarot went into Ginyu's Inju body, he jumps in the way, they're swapped back, so everybody's back in their respective bodies. So now we've got an angry mother Gine Great Ape just blasting Ginyu now back in his original body into oblivion. So Krillin and Chi-Chi think it best to now destroy the moon that Vegeta made, so Gine can then get back to normal. Both Gine and Kakarot are injured and Vegeta is just left mesmerized. These fools were able to take out the Ginyu Force in just a few minutes. What is going on right now? Either this is the best thing that could have happened, or the worst thing that could have happened. The best thing is that Vegeta can now try and escape properly, but the worst thing could be Frieza shows up. In any case, they better go and try and find Dende to heal everybody up. And of course for Frieza to do his job. During this part, and pretty much every single part that has involved Vegeta, he has been transfixed in not only besting Kakarot, but also besting Gine, something that he never thought would ever happen. A low-class woman who was destined to be part of a kitchen squad actually rise up against the prince? No way. With him no longer having his tail and Gine and Kakarot royally beating him, you see what I did there? Royally, because yeah, he's a former royal. The threat of Frieza is now looming more than ever. So we continue the story with the reminder that after all the shenanigans with body changes and whatnot with Goku, he is severely injured and he is in desperate need of medical attention. And thanks to the fact that they were able to take on the Ginyu Force and win, which means that they can take their time getting back to the others as well as Dende. So yeah, get on with the healing, boy. And I know that a lot of people were asking, okay Masako, how did Dende get his powers again? Well, that happened in the meantime. Elder Mori challenged Dende to take everyone else to Guru's tower and for them to have their potential unlocked. Because quite clearly, with the Ginyu Force coming, they needed some defense right now. And as we know from the original, when Dende had his potential unlocked, he was given the power to heal, which is something he is now using on Kakarot as well as Gine, and yeah, it's gonna be very, very helpful. I mean, sure, the Ginyu Force are gone, and yeah, there's, no immediate threat, but this is practically guaranteeing that Frieza is gonna come along because he would have heard the whole thing on the Ginyu Force's scouters. He thought he'd gotten away with his defection, but no, you can never get away from Lord Frieza. And especially when he finds out that there is a power level on this planet that is very close to his. It's too close to comfort, which gives Frieza all the more reason to travel to this planet. Oh, I'm going to take out that Vegeta boy, yes, not because I'm being threatened, although really, quite clearly, they have no idea. Dende heals Kakarot and is now healing Gine because she took a considerable beating in the fights with Vegeta and Captain Ginyu, even in her Ozaru form. This all results in, thanks to the good old Zenkai boost, a very big power increase, with Kakarot going up to 3.2 million and Gine up to 750,000. And this isn't down to the fact that, oh, Gine's getting old or something like that, or some kind of MacGuffin like that. No. It's down to the fact that the Zenkai boost is most effective when a Saiyan is on the brink of collapse and is about to perish. Kakarot was very much there, so therefore the multiplier and the boost that he got was much more potent than what Gine got because she was kind of a walking wounded. But I think this is where it's becoming all the more apparent to Gine that Kakarot's power is absolutely remarkable and that it may soon be her time to stand aside and let the new generation take the reins of defending the planet Earth. She will be able to achieve the thing that she managed to have for a while and something that she can get back to. A peaceful life without fighting. However, despite the fact that Gine and Kakarot are now healed, Vegeta isn't going along quietly. He is making it known to everyone that,
hey, I'm still injured, dummies. I need healing. I need healing a lot.
He threatens to end the young Dende, so that means nobody else can get healed, but yeah, it's an empty threat, and it's made even more empty when Kakarot just zips right to him, grabbing his hand and just giving him the look. This look shocks Gine. She never thought that she would see this look ever again in her lifetime, and that look is something that only Bardock can emulate. Right now, her son Kakarot looks more like his father than ever before. That steely, confident glare that really signifies to the person that's in that gaze that their days are numbered and that they better not mess with him. Gine couldn't be any more proud right now. Here is her son, a low-class warrior schooling the prince. If only Bardock could see this right now, he'd be in hysterics. Vegeta then uses the ace in the hole, something that he didn't want to admit to, but something that needs to be said. He then says that they better get him healed up quickly, or else Lord Frieza will be here to teach everybody a lesson in discipline. Frieza is indeed coming for the prince, and he reckons that he will also indulge his own lust for conquest by taking out all of his accomplices. Kakarot then looks to Gine for advice, and reluctantly, she nods, just saying, yeah, do it. Kakarot then turns back to Vegeta, saying, okay, but I swear, if you cross us, there'll be more than just your tail that gets cut off. But Vegeta doesn't care about this threat. As far as he's concerned, he's getting exactly what he wanted, a power boost, and possibly the potential to become the legendary Super Saiyan. He can't quite read the specifics of Kakarot's power level, but he can tell it's pretty big, so his power level needs to get pretty big too. Now here's something that I think we should address. With the Dragon Balls used up, and Kami back as well as Tenshinhan and Chaozu, the gang could in theory leave Planet Namek and just take the fight away from there, or, you know, just leave the Namekians to it or something like that. They have no reason to be there anymore, at least in basic theory. But Gine reckons that if they jump ship now, Frieza's still gonna destroy Planet Namek for wasting his time. The Namekians were so hospitable in gathering the Dragon Balls and bringing back their fallen comrades as well as their own set of Dragon Balls, it's only fair that, you know, with the Galactic Emperor coming to their door, they should really try and bash him away. Suddenly, the gang are jumped by Zarbon and Dodoria because remember, Frieza charged them to come along with the Ginyu Force as well, and due to all the carnage going around, they decided to hide and wait for the opportune moment because they knew Lord Frieza would come. So, moment of surprise time. They take a couple of Namekian bystanders as hostage, trying to buy Lord Frieza some time so that means he can make a grand entrance and distract the group. It works. But Masako, surely they'd be able to sense Frieza's power level arriving, right? The act of surprise won't work. Well, I mean, yeah, that's true, but come on, I think this gang is good-willed enough to not suddenly turn around when two people are in danger, two innocent people, mind you, and suddenly go, gasp, a higher power level? Well, by golly, that's more important. However, Gine has heard enough. These two people, these two minions, she's got a specific beef with. She rushes in, grabs the two bystanders from the goons, and stands between them. Zarbon and Dodoria are left speechless. They didn't expect this. They didn't expect them to be so powerful. Gine's not even looking at them. She is looking straight ahead, with her hands outstretched directly at the two faces. Then Dodoria decides to open her big mouth.
Hey, I know you. You're that Bardock's babe. What's a girl like you doing in a place like this?
This is for Bardock.
Ha! She immediately launches a dual ki blast in both the directions of Zarbon and Dodoria, which vaporizes them instantly. Gine is enacting her revenge because Dodoria and Zarbon tormented Bardock constantly. If there was one thing that she could do for a fallen lover, it's this. And the look that she basically gives the two remnants of Zarbon and Dodoria is a very primal look. This is something that only partners or people that pair for life can share. This was something she had to do, and Kakarot can see that. She then turns back to her son, the red mist dissipating, and then gives him an assuring smile saying that everything's okay now, as well as giving the thumbs up. But that look of confidence and assurance is short-lived. It then turns to a look of fear and horror. She's clasping eyes on something that she thought that she would never have to see again. It's Frieza. He is standing before the group with the largest of grins. Oh, I hope I'm not disturbing you, monkeys. As the rest of the group are taking out the Frieza soldiers very, very quickly, Vegeta stands there with a very brave face, thinking that he is not powerful enough to take on Frieza. No, he's not.
It's over, Frieza. I can feel it. I can feel a new power awakening inside of me. It is the power of the legendary Super Saiyan. You're not dealing with the average Saiyan warrior anymore.
Frieza immediately begins to stamp on Vegeta, who cannot defend himself at all. He thought that he was more powerful. Yeah, he was more powerful, but just not more powerful enough. Gine is just watching this happen, just the look of pity on her face, just going, she's gonna have to step in, isn't she? She rushes in and manages to get in the way. Frieza is stunned. Who is this woman? Wait, is this the one?
Is this the one with the high power level?
Immediately forgetting Vegeta, Frieza then begins to slow clap for Guinea. Oh, not bad, Saiyan woman. However, Frieza isn't all that concerned, because despite the power level of 500,000, it's still lower than something that he could muster in this first form. He then taps the scouter to confirm his thoughts, and yes, he's got nothing to worry about. Oh, 750,000? That's more than 500,000. Oh dear. Guinea then uses this diversion to punch Frieza in the face, sending him flying into a nearby mountain, totally surprised. Everybody is left dumbfounded, especially Guinea. She never expected that she herself would be the one to land a punch on Lord Frieza. Wow, this is pretty cool. Her Saiyan blood's beginning to bubble and boil and flow now. She's left completely stunned in her actions, but not for long, because Frieza is now back, ready to reply with a punch of his own, and we now get into a flurry of punches like we usually see in Dragon Ball Z between Guinea and Lord Frieza. This rush, Guinea can't explain it. Here she is, taking on Lord Frieza as equals, in fact, her being the superior one. She is winning! She is winning for the first time in her life against something so brutal. Kakarot is left on the sidelines with having to deal with Vegeta, who is now demanding to be healed again. Dende then sighs and heals him up again, with Vegeta now about the same power level as what Guinea was. Frieza then stops for a moment, bowing to Guinea, as if really actually showing her a sign of respect, which takes Guinea by surprise. Well done, monkey. After all these years, finally the subjects have managed to find someone powerful enough to stand up against me. But savor this moment, monkey, for it is over. I have something you don't know. He immediately powers up to his second form and gives Guinea a very smug look. Would you like to try again, monkey? Frieza is now wagging his finger, thinking that Guinea's about to escape. She's not going to escape now. She's managed to make her bed and she's got to lay in it. Isn't it cute? She thought that for 1 second she managed to get one over the Galactic Emperor, but oh no. As much as I would like to pander to your delusions of grandeur, I have a job to do by taking out this foolish prince who dares think that he can stand up before me and call himself superior. So would you kindly submit now and stand aside while I do my job? Or are you going to make things more difficult for yourself? Choose wisely. The red mist, akin to Gohan's rage boost, is descending down upon her, and what once held her back is keeping her locked on the spot. She is aware that Frieza is stronger than her again, but she has something he can't do. Grade 8 time! But for now, she wants to have some fun, as best as she can, despite her knowing disadvantage. Kakarot is getting concerned. His mother isn't strong enough. For years, she's been the top dog without wanting to be, and now that she seemingly wants to be the top dog, she isn't the top dog anymore. This bravado, which has been locked away for the longest time, suppressing her Saiyan nature, could be the thing that ends her, ironically. The fight begins, and thanks to her Saiyan lust for sparring, this match is surprisingly equal. Frieza, when he can get a hit on Guinea, is stronger, but the Emperor isn't used to the extra bulk, since he rarely uses this form, and therefore the smaller Saiyan can give the slip some of the time. This is enough to keep her in the game, at least for the time being. Gohan and Krillin are watching from the side, transfixed with Dende looking stunned, and then at his hands. These guys now stronger than he by millions of times, and now he's seeing that it's because of him that they are doing this. It's terrifying. Might they ironically be the ones to end him and his people's planet? Either way, the match is going on, and going and going and going, until Frieza's beginning to get tired. Tired of humoring this woman? He halts the proceedings and announces that he has another form from which he knows that nobody can counter. He powers up, and Guinea tries to attack, but is repelled by the sparking energy emitted by Frieza. We then get Frieza's third form, the most scary one yet. And I'm not talking about just in appearance though, it's in power as well. This power is not 1 million, but 2 million. Guinea has no answer for this, except her ace in the hole. She tries to concentrate on that thing Bardock could do, that thing that can make Saiyans transform without a moon presence, something that Vegeta could do. Surely she could do it as well, but no matter how hard she tries to remember, she can't do it. She got lucky that Vegeta had made one already for her earlier to use, but now there's nothing. Frieza stares at Gine, who is straining to remember this power, and the Emperor laughs with a hollow mirth.
What's the matter, monkey? Struggling to cope with this enormous power before you? You've yet to even grasp the power I am capable of. Allow me to demonstrate.
Frieza launches himself at Gine and slams her in the gut, knocking all the wind out of her. She had never been hit this hard before. That red mist that she'd been relying on, it's been knocked out of her. She is powerless to counter. Now Kakarot could step in, but Frieza is too close. He may do something rash that may harm Gine. Vegeta, use that thing to make Mom turn into a Great Ape, now! Maybe, if Vegeta made that thing, he could make another one, right? Well, Vegeta's not gonna be so helpful. He's just biding his time before he can challenge Frieza. This Gine that he's been watching actually outdo him, this low-class female warrior, he's not gonna help her at all. And this is something that Frieza has been relying on for the longest time. He knows that Vegeta won't interfere because of pride and challenges and his own satisfaction, and he wants to be the legendary Super Saiyan. Yeah, Vegeta at this point in the story is really not helping. To Vegeta's eyes, since he can't really sense energy properly, this power is nothing to be concerned with. After all, he is the legendary Super Saiyan now. Once he taps into that power properly, they won't need to rely on great apes ever again. He can feel it. Well, all he can feel right now is a faint haze of energy from Frieza, which is growing. Suddenly, Kakarot slams Vegeta in the back of the head, telling him to get a grip and focus. Now this is what was needed. Immediately, Vegeta's ability to sense energy is fully kicked in and realized, and oh no. That power that Frieza had, it's over twice now, and it's climbing! Now Vegeta, instead of being brash, is now speechless. He falls to the ground on his knees and is scared out of his wits. He's no use now. Trying to get him to make an energy ball full of Blotzways? He's got other things to worry about. Gine is left in the ringers, clothes tattered and covered in bruises. Frieza is ready to end her with a barrage of beams, but Kakarot then cannot wait any longer. He flies in and easily knocks the beams out of the way, because remember about what his power level is. He is stronger than Frieza technically. He was just letting Gine do a thing. The two then stare at one another before Kakarot fires a blast at Frieza, which the Emperor cannot dodge. When the smoke clears, Kakarot is on him. The two are fighting with a huge flurry of strikes. Gine is barely able to stand and is watching her son take on Lord Frieza. Her son is in danger. She is worrying about her son like any mother would. He doesn't know what that monster can do, what kind of tricks he can play to play dirty and play rough and not to the rules. In that moment, Gine is lost in a world of her own. Her mind takes her back to the days of old on planet Vegeta. She remembers all the times in her life where she was left powerless and felt like nothing, like she couldn't do anything. Despite all the years on Earth where she was the strongest, those didn't matter right here and now. The times when she was an embarrassment to the Saiyan race, despite Bardock giving her a chance. When she was demoted to being a mere cook, despite her desire to get stronger. She had been labelled as a failure and consigned to the kitchen, as the only target she could successfully land a blow on was something on a chopping block. And even though she had resigned herself to a life of peace, it was still marred by the fact that Lord Frieza was out there somewhere. It wasn't peace at all, and not to mention all the blowback that she got from other Saiyan warriors, by being derided by said warriors and not having many friends. But Bardock gave her something to live for. 2 boys. Those boys proved she could do something useful. They gave her hope, and from there on, it was all uphill. Earth gave her a home, and the realization that she can do good, and she can be strong. But now though, it was all going back to the way it was. All thanks to the being that put her there in the first place. Gine falls to her knees, like Vegeta did, and begins to cry, pounding the ground. But then something snaps. Something snaps her out of it. Frieza, bested again, has now transformed into his final form without her realizing. Now stronger than Kakarot in his base form, he chose not to waste any time and fired a beam straight at Kakarot's chest. From where Gine was looking, it looked like it was game ending. Kakarot stumbles backwards and reels in pain, but this spark of rage and fear for her son's life is enough to tip Gine over the edge. She can feel something bubbling up inside of her. This primal spark is tinted gold and is giving her the energy to stand up again, final form Frieza then suddenly remembers that she was there at all, and is curious as to what kind of power this is, as is Kakarot and Vegeta. No way. Is she? Gine is twitching uncontrollably. No more. No more. Her mind is going crazy. She can't let go now. If she does, her life of peace that she's been striving for will be gone forever. If she lets loose, will she ever be able to control it? It doesn't matter anymore. Her son is in trouble, and she has to do what mothers have to do. Protect her family. Only this time, it's with a legendary power. She lets out a monstrous scream, and her aura goes from white to yellow. Her hair turns golden, and her eyes whiten before settling to white and green pupils. Gine is a Super Saiyan. Now this is where you think I'd stop things for right now. But I'm not. Frieza has no scouter to rely on right now, but from the reactions of everyone around him, this power is nothing like the bravado that Vegeta was spouting before. This is the real deal. His power, around about 4 million at the moment, is eclipsed by Gine's 37.5 million, thanks to the 50 times Super Saiyan multiplier. Kakarot is stunned. Whoa, Mom could do that? Could he do that? How did she do that? Kakarot cheers out loud. Woo, Mom, you're so cool. I know you had it in you. Mom? Mom? Gine is saying nothing. She walks slowly to Frieza, ignoring everyone, including Kakarot. Frieza is now stepping backwards, looking slightly intimidated at the lack of drivel. Saiyans usually go on and on about their power, but this one's silent. It's scaring him now. He tries to fire a beam like before, but Gine just casts it aside into a nearby mountain. Not a flinch. Frieza then fires multiple beams to slow her down. Nothing doing. The beams just get closer and closer until Gine grabs the hand that fired them and crushes it. Frieza lets out a howling whimper before falling to the ground, clasping his hand. Gine looks down at the heap and lands a powerful kick in Frieza's gut, sending him flying so far that he goes past the horizon. Gine, still silent, flies off after him. Not a single word to her son. Kakarot's beginning to get a little bit scared. This isn't the mother he knows. She would normally give him the thumbs up or smile to show that she's okay. Something's wrong. He flies off in hot pursuit with Vegeta keen to follow, despite not being able to do anything at the moment. How dare they ignore him! With Gine on the hunt, Frieza is on the back foot. When he gets up from where he landed, he screams in frustration. Damn it! When will these monkeys just give up? But they won't give up, because Gine is right there in front of him, still silent. Frieza then tries to counter, give her the slip, but she's on him immediately. We then get a repeat of first form Frieza versus Gine being bested by her, and Frieza just cannot get a word in edgeways. In just half a minute, Frieza is looking worse for wear. But he knows something Gine doesn't know. He's only using 3% of his power right now. He was just caught napping. If this monkey is going to give him the silent treatment, he will do so as well. It's all that she deserves. He powers up to 50% power, and surely this will be enough. Gine's Super Saiyan power may be pretty impressive at 37.5 million, but the power of Frieza at half his full power is 60 million, remember? It's not double, but Gine's going to be on the back foot pretty hard during this part of the tussle. But for most of the fight, Gine in her Super Saiyan guise is uncontrollable and incredibly silent, save for the primal grunt and shout as she unpredictably moves around. And that is exactly what saves her in this initial section of this part of the fight. This wild fighting style catches Frieza off guard, and even at half of his full power, it's not enough to stop him from being pounded on for the first few comings together. So Gine at the moment is pretty lucky. However, he soon gets the handle on Gine and calms down for once. He's sure that he will reign supreme. What's to worry about? The other monkey seemingly can't go Super Saiyan, and if this beast is his mother, then he's going to enjoy asserting his dominance. The tables turn hard, with Gine aiming a direct punch at Frieza's face, but he blocks it with ease and slowly twists her fist before snapping it around 180 degrees, snapping her wrist, all without breaking eye contact. Gine lets out a scream of abject agony. With barely any pause in proceedings, Frieza just flicks his tail and slaps Gine across the face and into a nearby pile of rubble. And Kakarot, understandably, I think you'd be too, he's horrified at Frieza's callous nature and wants to help. He rushes over to Gine, but is then bashed back by the rampaging Super Saiyan, as if to say that she's not done yet. Kakarot looks to Frieza, who shrugs. I'm not the one telling you to stand aside, monkey. It seems like your mother is not done fighting your battles for you. Why would I wish to deny her that opportunity? It seems like she's enjoying it also. Sure enough, Guinea's mouth is curled into a sinister smirk. Her Saiyan instincts are coursing through her veins, more than ever, supercharged by the power of Super Saiyan. Had her fears all come true finally? Had she truly lost all sense of herself? Not quite. She still cared for Kakarot and still wished to fight for her son, but not in the way that she would have done normally or naturally. It's totally not like Guinea. She leaps forward and begins another barrage of strikes, which initially surprises Frieza, but not for long. This goes on for what seems like ages. Frieza seemingly enjoying being the top dog at the moment. Guinea now is looking pretty ragged and is beginning to tire, but she's constantly fighting in there, trying to drag this fight out as much as possible. Kakarot really wants to step in badly, or give her a senzu bean, but he's all out of them. There's nothing he can do. Frieza stands up straight and looks weary. I'm satisfied now. Guinea grunts as if to say, what? I now know for sure that all of these jabs that you got on me before were utter flukes. You got lucky. You should be proud though, monkey. Not one other being other than my father has seen me perform in this form, and I seriously hope to keep it that way. Goodbye, Guinea-san. Only now when he's about to finish the job does he actually mention her name, and it's so galling, as if to admit that you lost, monkey. He launches one of his trademark finger beams, and Guinea, instead of trying to dodge, launches herself straight at Frieza, landing a punch on his smug face, but she's still struck by the beam. I guess not dodging just skipped a generation. Guinea was struck straight in the chest, almost immediately taking her out of the Super Saiyan form, her fist slowly sliding down Frieza's face before she collapses on the ground, motionless. Kakarot is also left motionless, tears streaming down his face. Is his mother gone? Frieza chuckles to himself and then turns to Kakarot, being absolutely smug. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that too much for you to bear? I didn't mean to. I mean, she was coming right for me and I had to defend myself. And I think you know where this is going. Kakarot is sparking. He too is about to ascend to the power of Super Saiyan, and since his power is 3.2 million as opposed to Guinea's 750,000 in their base forms, oh, it's gonna be fun. He lets out a primal roar at the loss of his mother right before him. Kakarot is now also a Super Saiyan. Frieza, though, cannot sense energy, nor the power difference between the two. Remember, so he's assuming that this Saiyan's power is identical to that of his foolish mother's. So with Kakarot's power right now, with the multiplier, it's 160 million, and if you've done your maths on your research, you know where this is going to go. So without even flinching, Kakarot calls out to Krillin and Gohan to take Guinea's body and just get out of there. There may be a chance that she's still alive. Krillin and Gohan don't want to get right up close to Frieza, but Kakarot has no patience for this right now, and just screams the order again to them, and they then decide to make their way towards Frieza like a bunch of loons, who then spots them as if they were annoying flies, which effectively they are. No you don't. You're not taking away my trophy. He was about to point his finger at them, but he realized he had no longer control of his hands or his fingers. Without spotting it, Kakarot had gotten around the back of Frieza and got him in a full Nelson, slowly beginning to squeeze harder and harder. Frieza is beginning to feel the pain as the grip increases in tightness. He's too distracted, though, to notice Krillin slipping in underneath, whimpering as he does, and scoops up Guinea's body before turning tail and running like heck out of there. Frieza is writhing in pain and cannot break free due to the overwhelming difference in power, and not to mention the fact that he had used a little bit of his stamina with the fight with Guinea, her dragging her out as soon as possible. This was part of the plan. A thing that we all know too well of Dragon Ball Z Frieza. He does tend to act rashly, doesn't he? Kakarot is growling with anger, but is more cool than his mother, having more martial arts discipline. Plus, the desire to get even is keeping him going and keeping him sane. You've had your fun, Frieza. Now you will pay for what you did. I'm going to make sure that you never hurt anybody else ever again.
the Saiyans you fought so hard to erase will instead erase you.
Frieza then uses all his strength and stomps on Goku's foot, which allows him to break loose, but the power difference is still pretty amazing. Not bad, Monkey, but you got lucky. I've seen what you Super Saiyans are all about, and I have to be honest, it's not all that special. I don't know why I was so frightened by this so-called legend back in the day. Kakarot decides to answer Frieza by appearing right behind Frieza again and ground-pounding him so hard that it causes a 50-foot crater in the ground. It's massive! In fact, Krillin barely escapes the impending ground coming before him. But when Frieza comes to, he doesn't find himself in the ground, he finds himself in outer space. Wait, what? How did he get there? Well, it turns out Kakarot had spun him around and around so fast that he launched the Tyrant into orbit. Okay, but why would Kakarot do this? Well, he'd think that Frieza would just asphyxiate up there because space is a vacuum. No such luck. Frieza is angry, and he uses this moment to power up to full power and promptly charges back into the fight. Why isn't he blowing up the planet now? He is way too obsessed fighting Kakarot right now. He's beginning to enjoy this, and not to mention that he's surprised and really keen to prove the Saiyan wrong before wiping out this world. By doing that, it would mean that nobody would even dare to utter about this humiliation because no one's going to be around. Kakarot is looking up to the sky and can sense that Frieza is still alive up there. And so he turns to the others and tells them to get to the ship and take as many Namekians with them as they can. Kakarot then communicates with King Kai and tells him to tell Kami to wish him back with the Dragon Balls in case they need them. Kami then complies with this request. With the rest of the gang on the ship and heading away from the planet with as many Namekians as they can carry, Kakarot is left all alone, with Frieza speeding right towards him. Yep, this power is higher because Frieza at his full power, but still not strong enough, and it's reducing rapidly. The battle continues with Frieza and Kakarot duking it out, and sure enough, Frieza is beginning to tucker out. Unlike the original, Frieza has no chance now against Kakarot throughout the entire battle. Gine had done her job of taking the edge off Frieza, and her son was basically finishing the job that she'd started. So, in a way, I guess, Gine got the assist. Frieza and Kakarot stare each other down and prepare for an ultimate beam struggle. Kakarot's Kamehameha versus the Frieza world-ending ball. The struggle is fierce, but Frieza's decreasing energy supplies are beginning to show themselves more and more. He's giving his all, while Kakarot right now, from what he can tell, is relatively coasting. Kakarot then shouts, "This is for everyone that you massacred! Ah!" Frieza can't answer to this and is promptly vaporized in the rush of blue energy that surrounds him. Frieza is gone. And with that, Kakarot falls out of Super Saiyan and collapses to the ground, breathing heavily. He can no longer sense Frieza's power. It's done. But now, how's he going to get home? And is his mother still alive? He doesn't know, because they're long gone. With the Namekians safe, Elder Mori, who had chosen to stay on the planet just to keep the Dragon Balls safe, thanks Kakarot for saving them, but the Saiyan is not much for talking right now. As far as he's aware, he might have lost his mother. However, he is grateful for their help with the Dragon Balls, and the Namekian offers their services again should Earth need it, as a mark of respect. Kakarot then, like in the original, checks to see if there is any kind of transportation, some kind of pod that can take him home. He then stumbles across Frieza's ship and eventually finds the same pod that took him to Yardrat in the original, which also takes him there without him realizing it. He is too tired right now. He just punches in a random code, thinking it'll take him to Earth or something like that, but it's not going to. By the time Goku arrives, the Yardratians recognize the being. Ah yes, he's just like that other being that is currently living there. But more on that later. So, 10 parts, eh? How do we celebrate this achievement? Well, tell you what. We will acknowledge the Garlic Jr. saga in this episode. Oh, let's just have a bit of fun. Don't worry though, it's not the focus of this part, I can assure you. It's just more than a simple sentence around this time. Months after the gang returned to Earth, Gine has fully recovered and spent the time living a very, very quiet life with Grandpa Gohan, a stone's throw away from Kakarot and Chi-Chi's place. That is until the minions of Garlic Jr. arrive and kidnap Gine, whom they've detected to be the strongest being on the planet currently, and suitably fit for purpose for the likes of Garlic Jr. So, in short, instead of Piccolo being controlled by Garlic Jr., it's Gine. Gohan has to be the one to save his grandmother, and is able to do so, with his classic rage boost coming to the fore, and they eventually destroy the Black Water Mist. It's still pretty balmy, because, you know, who cares? Vegeta isn't off searching the cosmos for Kakarot this time around, because he's got his teacher and the ability to go Super Saiyan right there in the form of Gine, who has been snubbing him every single time he's tried to approach her about the topic. Then, licking his wounds, literal wounds, because Gine was able to beat him back, which impressed Grandpa Gohan and Kid Gohan, Vegeta then seeks solace at Capsule Corp, and the relationship between him and Bulma, you know, that one begins to flourish like it does in the original. But what about Yamcha, I hear you say? Well, he was able to stick around for longer, but his flagrant spending and money-driven ways just kind of wore Bulma down as she got older, to the point where, you know, she kind of lost that romantic spark for him. It just fizzled out. Besides, Vegeta's anger was something that she felt emboldened to subdue, and so he would ultimately see the arrival of Baby Trunks. So we're all getting ourselves ready for when the hero of the hour returns. On Yardrat, Kakarot has fully recovered and is getting himself used to the world of Yardrat to, you know, just kind of scope out the joint. But one day, one of the lead practitioners of their martial arts inquires about the Saiyans' arrival. You know, they've kind of been happy to see a newcomer, but now they want to know why he's even there. Kakarot states that he had just gotten from the planet Namek and hoped to be heading back home to Earth, but got lost on the way. He had just defeated Lord Frieza, and—
What? Frieza's gone?
shouts a raspy voice from behind a curtain. The Yardratians scatter, and a tall black-haired humanoid appears from some shawls. It's Raditz.
There's no mistaking it, brother.
Kakarot is stunned. Of all things to expect, he didn't expect Raditz to be here. The two then shake hands, and Kakarot begins to explain what happened on Namek to his brother. Raditz is left astonished. After thousands of years of no Super Saiyans, two of them show up at the same time, and they are related to him.
Ha! I knew it! Saiyan elites, royal blood, it all meant nothing. Us low-class warriors showed them, just like Father told us way back when. Say, Kakarot, you think you could teach me that power?
Kakarot is unsure. After all, this is only the second time that they've actually been in the same room together. You know, he and Raditz. Yeah, he'd come to Earth to try and invade it before. Sure, their mother had faith in him, and it was cool that he had a brother, but you couldn't just teach him Super Saiyan willy-nilly to someone because, you know, he barely knew the guy.
If you teach me, I can teach you something in return.
Something that will make that craft that you arrived on here obsolete. That's right. Raditz offers up the gift of instant transmission in return. Now you see, here's what happened to Raditz, and you've been waiting for this for 7 parts, so here we go. Now, after faking his demise, Raditz had set out into the stars to rebuild his life. Now, even though he hadn't convinced Vegeta that he was really gone, as you know, they didn't really care about his fate. They were obsessed on Kakarot and Gine. As for their taller family member, he took to being free like a duck to water. After spending some time focusing on getting a little bit stronger, now he was free from the scolding of Vegeta and Nappa, Raditz felt then ready to give back what he'd taken from all of the civilizations that he, Vegeta and Nappa had destroyed on the behest of Frieza. It's time for some redemption. It's time for Freedom Fighter Raditz to arise. However, without a scouter, Raditz was reliant on news that came about from hearsay and gossip. Whilst this was a nice change of pace and all, it didn't half make things sort of hard to get started in trying to find things to save. It was a slow start, but the Saiyan did begin to direct his instincts for a good fight into fighting for good, doing his mother proud. The Saiyan got a particular passion actually for this, and soon gained a reputation as a rather ironic saviour. A Saiyan turning good? Who would have seen that coming? Then, one day, Raditz found himself on Yardrat after reports of a rogue outfit having tried to take over the planet and trying to find out the secret of instant transmission, something that was rumoured to be sourced on Yardrat. The holy grail of transportation was in people's hands. Just capture a Yardratian and then use it in your spaceship or whatever. But Raditz stepped in, now having gotten the tech to listen into distress calls. After putting that threat to bed, Raditz was granted an audience with the leader and granted sanctuary in Yardrat, free to call this his home in between jaunts saving the galaxy. Since then, Raditz learnt the secret of instant transmission as another gift, as well as starting to focus on his training again. And here we are. Kakarot can feel that Raditz is a fair bit stronger than he was on Earth, but let's be real here, nowhere near as strong as he or Gine. His brother didn't really want to hear that though. However, Raditz feels that, his time here on Yardrat has run its course. The Yardratians are nice, friendly people and all, but in between jobs, it's kinda dull here. He's the only Saiyan. With Frieza gone, perhaps now he can finally be with his family.
Hey, bro, you gonna teach me that thing of yours or what?
What? Oh, yeah, sure, whatever. I mean, I have nothing better to do, but teach me Super Saiyan when we get back to Earth.
It's Earth, bro.
Yeah, that.
And in much quicker time, Kakarot has learned instant transmission. And the first thing he does with it is to go and find King Cold. Wait, what? His power is similar to Frieza, and it isn't that far away from here, so why not tackle it?
You want to take out the king? He's stronger than Frieza, or so I hear.
Frieza was way stronger. He was using like less than 1% of his power before Mom and I showed up. Don't worry, I can do this.
Raditz's mind is blown. Frieza was scary back then? It's a good thing he wasn't on Namek then.
You wanna come watch, bro?
Kakarot grabs Raditz's shoulder, and before he can say no, the two of them are now facing King Cold.
What? What are you doing here?
Raditz is trying to think of a good excuse and try and sound heroic.
We are here to stop you, vile king!
Wait a second. Is that you, Raditz? Oh, I thought Vegeta had finished you off years ago. How have you been? I thought I'd try and be polite before I would then eviscerate you for daring to invade my chambers. Kakarot steps forward and then explains to the king that his son is no more, and they are here to do the same thing to him. But King Cold doesn't believe them for a second. That is until Kakarot powers up and blasts a hole straight through him. Kinda like what Trunks did to him. That was fast. Raditz is amazed. He hadn't seen the power of a Super Saiyan before now, and here it is. Kakarot then powers down again and turns to Raditz.
Hey bro, let's go home, I'm starving.
Sure?
Moments later, Gine and Grandpa Gohan are just gardening outside their house with Chi-Chi and Gohan also playing/training outside, when all of a sudden, Raditz and Kakarot just show up without any kind of warning.
Yo!
Everybody stops what they're doing, and Gine is just elated. She hugs her two sons.
Raditz, you came back! It's over! Frieza's gone! We can be a family now!
I know, Mother. Cold's gone too. Kakarot took care of that one.
Aw, he was easy. You could have done it, Mom. Aw, shoot, says Gine. I wanted to go then.
Everybody bursts into laughter, and this is the first time that Raditz has done so in a long time. But suddenly, a power has appeared near Idiot Rock. It's Trunks. We know it is, but they don't. When everybody heads on over to that location, and I mean everyone, they find a yellow craft with a lavender-haired boy waiting outside it, trying to figure out what's happening. Frieza was supposed to show up. Goku? Huh? But then, he can sense these powers coming close to his ship, including the tall ones. Ah, good. He decided to stay after all. Raditz has no clue who this person is. He has no clue about anything right now. He literally just got here. He just saw King Cold be taken out. Basically, this has been the weirdest day of his life. Trunks spots Goku and beckons him over to deliver the news about the androids, but Raditz insists to listen in too, but Gine holds him back, clutching onto his arm. Raditz, let your brother speak to the nice young stranger. She had been longing to mollycoddle Raditz again for the first time in what seems like forever. Trunks keeps his cards close to his chest though, and simply gives Kakarot the heart medicine and then bids him farewell. But he then says one more thing. Your brother, find him a girlfriend. He looks kinda lonely. And with that, Trunks departs, and Kakarot heads on over to the gang.
Okay guys, we got ourselves 3 years to train for a new enemy who will show up and try and take over the world. Who's with me?
Raditz pats his brother's shoulder, and the others all cheer in support. That is, except for Gine. She looks unsure. Where was I going with this, you may be wondering? Well, I get the feeling that Gine had planned to retire from fighting after Namek, and go back to a life of peace with Grandpa Gohan. After all, she had loved that time on Earth, you know, that 15-year period when she actually got there to when King Piccolo came around, when she could just train her son for fun and bonding with him and not worrying about having to go all out or risking any lives. The arrival of King Piccolo, though, pushed her into the foreground quite reluctantly. And even though she realized her potential and what she could actually do, she was stronger than she thought she was, it wasn't the ideal life that she wanted. She wanted to forget about the Frieza Force and just spend the rest of her days living and being. Her getting punted into the Saiyan pod was a sign for her to just settle down. Granted, her Saiyan nature did rekindle her passion when she realized she could stop Lord Frieza after all. She even had the ability to go Super Saiyan and truly stick it to Frieza for a good long while before her son could come in and finish the job. Together, they proved their worth. She had proved her worth, but what was left to prove now? Her main reason for getting stronger was gone. Frieza was no more. Her race was avenged. Bardock was avenged. Her sons are safe and living right next door. Well, I mean, until Raditz can find a bigger place to counter for his height. Put simply, she doesn't want to fight anymore. She doesn't need to. She's well into her 50s at this point, and even though she still looks and feels as fresh and young as she was when she had her boys nearly 30 years ago, her mind was far more sage than it was back then. She knew it was time to step back and let Kakarot lead the others, and this time there was nothing he could say to make her change her mind. After Raditz has settled in nearby and Kakarot has finished training one day, Gine calls him over to tell him this decision. Kakarot doesn't take to this well at all. Just like before when she mooted this idea like years ago. Kakarot pleads with her to keep training with him. She's a Super Saiyan.
Mom, you're strong like me. You still got fight in ya. Don't you want to prove Vegeta wrong and show him that low-class warriors are more awesome than he thinks they are?
He just doesn't get it. I don't want to prove anything. I've nothing left to prove. I'm not like you, son. I don't fight out of pleasure. You enjoy all this, and it's something I could provide while we were roughly the same in power. You're far stronger than me now. What could I do?
Go Super Saiyan!
Kakarot, listen to me. I am done. I will not fight anymore. Kakarot isn't angry per se, just confused as to why his mother is turning down this opportunity to get stronger still. It just doesn't compute. Kakarot goes to Raditz and seeks guidance.
She doesn't? Huh. Well, that's weird. But then again,
Raditz thinks to himself, acting like the wise elder brother.
She never seemed the fighting type from what I remember. You know, this is before you were actually around. You were just a baby in a nursing pod. Mother was a kind soul whose heart wasn't in battle, but in protecting you. I couldn't stand that when I was little. It felt wrong. I wanted to be like our dad, and so I trod down that path. I guess you were destined to travel down Mother's path. Only, he looks at Kakarot's hair, you decided to travel down both paths instead.
In the end, Raditz succeeds in calming down Kakarot, but then Gine comes over and talks to them both, kind of crying a little bit. Please don't be cross with me, boys. I don't mean to cause you any grief. Okay, I will help you. Only on 2 conditions. First, I will train Gohan only. He needs to understand what he is capable of, and Chi-Chi can only do so much these days. That doesn't mean that I will fight the androids, though. I'm just going to prepare the boy. And secondly, keep the prince away from me. Raditz blinks for a second.
What?
Your prince has been bugging me since we got back to Earth for me to teach him how to go Super Saiyan. I'm sick of it. Here's your problem now. If you take care of that, I will help Gohan. Kakarot thinks about this for a moment. Not keen on Gohan getting to have all the fun, but in the end, he complies. Gine smiles. Thank you for understanding. And so, the 3 years are then spent with Kakarot and Raditz training together, with Vegeta joining in a fair bit and enjoying being stronger than Raditz at this point, and Gine spends time with Gohan and Chi-Chi training them. Meanwhile, Grandpa Gohan is watching all of this happen from, his house, because it's right there, and knows that Gine is destined to not get her way entirely. She will be brought into this somehow, someday. In the meantime, Raditz does indeed do what you think he will do and meets launch. The two of them hit it off, but this time around, it's a far more casual affair, since Raditz is too busy training, and also his time in space has made him quite aloof and prone to just drifting around, not really committing to things. So if you're thinking that Ranch, Daikon, and Mully will show up here, sorry about that. It just wouldn't fit into this story, shoehorning them in just for the sake of fan service. Launch is okay with this though. She isn't in the mood to be tied down yet in her life. Having said that, here's some pretty hot stuff, and this Raditz is a lot more bold than the R&R Raditz, I'll leave it at that. 3 years later, and the gang are ready. In that time, Gohan has become a Super Saiyan thanks to Guine's training, as has Vegeta after doing a mix of training on his own and with the other Saiyans, swallowing his pride in exchange for this new power. It was a bitter pill to swallow. What's more important is that Guine made sure that Kakarot took his heart medicine that Trunks left him the day before they were supposed to fight the androids. Kakarot didn't want to take the medicine, thinking that it wasn't important, that this may never happen, they may have changed time and it never, would hurt him. But you know how mothers can be sometimes. She made sure that he took it, and ultimately, the heart virus doesn't strike. Or at least it doesn't affect Goku as much as it does in the original. Guine and Grandpa Gohan wish the group good luck, and Kakarot looks to his mother and makes one last remark, which actually kinda stings. "I wish you were coming along too, Mom," before flying away. Not even saying bye. Guine starts to well up a little. Not even a bye. What if this was the last time she saw him alive? Grandpa Gohan comforts her. The gang then make their way to Sasebo, where they're meant to strike, and they're met by Yamcha, Tenshinhan, and Bulma, with a baby Trunks in tow. Vegeta is there as well, itching to get the party started, to show off Super Saiyan. Minutes pass, nothing. But then suddenly, the attack begins, but they don't sense any energy. This is gonna be tricky. In the end, sadly, Yamcha still gets a hole in the chest, and the gang then spots androids 19 and 20. These are the targets. After moving to a desert location, the fight begins with Goku going Super Saiyan, surprising Dr. Gero, but then the other Saiyan identified as Raditz, from what little intel the androids have on him because he was just there on the planet for a few minutes, goes golden as well.
"I'll be fighting you, Doctor!"
Gero wasn't expecting to be fighting right now, but for now, he decides to play along with 19 taking on Goku. The fight goes on, with Goku having the advantage like in the original, but he suddenly starts to feel a little bit winded. Something's wrong. Wait, the heart medicine. It was supposed to stop this from happening, right? Goku's really confused and getting kind of angry. I mean, that's true, it's supposed to stop it, but he should have taken it earlier. Right now, it's still going to play havoc with his ki for a little while. It's enough for 19 to gain the upper hand. But Raditz spots this and aids a hand, relieving the Doctor of his worries. That is, for a split second. There's someone else.
"Where do you think you're going?"
Vegeta appears right behind the Doctor, turning Super Saiyan.
"Oh god, not another one!"
Gero is then kicked through several rock faces before being set upon by Vegeta again. The fight is arduous, and so far, Gohan hasn't been tested. However, Vegeta is being as barbaric as he was with 19, doing the same thing to Gero when he realizes that they both can absorb energy. He rids the Doctor of his hands because they're a nuisance to him, and Raditz is leading the charge against 19, who is pretty much a wreck. In the end, both Gero and 19 are destroyed by the 3 Super Saiyans. Gohan is actually a little sad that he didn't get to fight after all. Goku, a little winded, goes,
"Ah, don't worry, buddy. You'll get your chance."
and sure enough, he might. Since they don't need to chase after Gero, Trunks arrives at the same spot and spots the group just standing there. "What are you guys doing? The androids are gonna get away if you do—" "Oh, you guys took care of this already?" Vegeta scoffs.
"Yes, and without your help after all."
Trunks looks around, surveying the scene, and then spots Gero's disembodied hands and 19's head in the sand.
"Wait, these aren't the androids."
Everybody perks up.
"What?"
exclaims Raditz. "These aren't the androids I fought in the future. These are different. Something's happened." As they figure this out, Bulma arrives with Yajirobe and baby Trunks. Future Trunks spots the baby version of himself and tries to not look at him, to not arouse suspicion. Yet, Raditz and Kakarot let that cat out of the bag, and then this leaves Vegeta stunned for a moment that, 2 versions of his son are right there. But there's no time to dwell about that. Bulma finds out what happened when the group tell her, and then realizes that this guy's the same Gero that she knew in the past. She offers to guide the gang over to his lab in the mountains and trying to find more clues and maybe more androids in case the ones that Trunks fought in the future are lurking there. Try and get the jump on them. As that's going on, something is afoot. A green monster is skulking around the forest, seeking out a very high power level that he discovered somewhere near Mount Palzu. It had been supping off random citizens with low potential, but this specimen that he just found could be quite delicious. It may not be its primary target, but this power is just sitting around doing nothing. Why not? The house is there, and he can sense his prize. It's not too powerful that he can't win, but it's way better food than what he's had up to now. So, he strikes. Gine suddenly feels a strong power, which resembles everyone she knows, bizarrely in some way, outside, and goes out to investigate, and is then leapt upon by Cell. Cell can feel energy coursing into his body, which is unlike any other Earthling he has drunk before now. In fact, it's really gelling well with its good portion of his own DNA, his Saiyan DNA. Gine can feel her legs shriveling up, and she is using all her power to yank it out, but it's wedged in there. Cell is laughing maniacally as Gohan's now also trying to pull out the tail. Back on the way to Jiro's lab, everyone can sense that something is wrong. However, Kakarot and Raditz know exactly what's up. Their mother is in trouble. Something must have gotten to her. Perhaps this was some kind of decoy from Jiro. If he fell in battle, then this other attacker, whoever it is, could come in and sneak up on them. Raditz, without warning, instant transmissions right back to where his mother's key is, and without even caring who he hits, arrives in the nick of time. Cell has pretty much drunk most of Gine's right leg before he could feel his body fly several dozen feet away in the opposite direction as he's met by a punch to the jaw by a rushing Raditz. Cell is thrown for a loop, which gives Raditz enough time to grab his mother and Grandpa Gohan and transmission them back out of there. Where does he go? Well, he heads up to Korin's tower, far up in the sky, where this guy can never possibly think to go.
And also, that's where they grow those senzu beans, right? They gotta fix my mama!
When they get there, Korin is surprised to see Raditz, whom he'd only met once before, when Kakarot was showing Raditz around where he usually liked to hang out, and where they grow their famous beans.
Whoa, Dit! Hey, aren't you supposed to be helping out? Ow, Kami, what happened to a leg? Ugh.
He knows Gine alright from all the years of adventures with Kakarot, and seeing a shriveled up leg is enough to make him heave over the side of the tower. Raditz is not appreciating this at the moment, and instead turns to Gine, whom has luckily fainted from the sheer adrenaline rush. Grandpa Gohan comes to his senses and speaks for her.
Thank you, Raditz. I thought we were done for. That bug monster was utterly horrifying. Bug monster? Is that what I punched? I was too blind with rage that I didn't get a look at it. But hey, Korin! Stop heaving and start beaming!
And with that instruction, Korin quickly goes to find one of his last batch of beans. Back on the land, Kakarot's heart is starting to calm down a little, not helped by the concern regarding Gine. His ki is still acting up, meaning that his flying is very disrupted, but he can just about go in the same direction as the others. But instant transmission though? No, that's out of the question for the moment. The younger Gohan senses that Raditz managed to save Gine, and everyone breathes a sigh of relief as they make their way calmly to the lab of the late Dr. Gero. When they get there, just outside of North City, they are met with a metal door. Vegeta offers to blow the door up, but Kakarot offers to instant transmission through and open the door from the inside, but Gohan doesn't reckon that that's wise due to his ki being all funny right now.
Well, Dad, who knows where you might end up? You could end up in space and suffocate. Ugh. Oh, well, I don't want that. It's a good idea though, Dad. Just not so good timing. Yeah.
Kakarot sighs, hoping for his ki to right itself sooner or later. It's getting boring now. Bulma then tries to hack into the door's controls, but these controls are far too complex for the short amount of time that they have. Who knows what could be inside, ready to storm them? Reluctantly, they all turn to Vegeta and point to the door, without saying a word.
Gladly.
Vegeta fires a beam at the door, and it explodes, causing carnage to the entrance of the lab, but everything else inside is okay. When they get inside, they see a clean and functional laboratory with various empty pods strewn around, but 3 pods are closed and active. Trunks immediately spots 2 pods with the numbers 17 and 18 on them. Yes, these are the 2 androids that wrecked my timeline. They haven't been activated yet. I say we destroy them now and be rid of these menaces before they even have a chance. Bulma turns to her future son and looks shocked. Destroy them? Why? They haven't done anything yet. But Mom, don't you get it? Thanks to these two, everyone I know is gone. Even Gohan. Gohan is stunned.
Wait, I'm gone in the future?
Trunks turns around. I'll explain later. I will not allow you to wake those up. Wake them? No way. I want to reprogram them. According to their readouts, they're mostly human with upgrades. That's so cool, Trunks. I'm not gonna turn them on. I'll just transport them to Capsule Corp and reset them there. Trunks is resistant. After all, this was the reason that he came back in time, to fix the problem. But his mother was one of the smartest people he knew, so whatever she's doing, she must have a good plan and a reason. Back with Korin. Gine has had a sensu bean, and her leg is slowly recovering. In fact, she got a nice Zenkai boost from all of this, but not that she particularly wanted one at the moment. She is looking very introspective. Just when I thought I could escape all this, it comes right to my front door. Raditz and Grandpa Gohan look quite apprehensive. Mother, I know that this wasn't what you wanted, but don't you get it? You're a Saiyan. No matter where you go, you can't escape your nature. I did once. For 15 years, I had a peaceful life. Away from Frieza. Away from all those doubters who said I was nothing. I had my son, and now I have you too. Why can't I have that life again, Raditz? Why? She's tearing up right now, and Gohan shuffles and backs up his now second son. Gine, the truth is, you never escaped it. Kakarot is the pure embodiment of the Saiyan fighting spirit, which you nurtured. If you wanted to truly escape from all of this, you would have abandoned your son and gone off on your own. Gine is left stunned. Abandon Kakarot? Never! I would never do that! He's my son! Kakarot was one of the few things that kept me going! You see, says Gohan, you channeled your Saiyan pride through your son instead of yourself. You did the same with your grandson these past 3 years. You may say that you want nothing to do with your instincts, but, in fact, you and Kakarot are the ultimate definition of them. While she is assessing all of this, the gang have disconnected the 2 android pods of 17 and 18 from the main supply of power and loaded them into some empty capsules that Bulma had in her car, which was coincidentally marked 17 and 18, the pods. Bulma laughs at this. It was like it was meant to be. Anywho, I'll get these over to the lab right now, put Trunks to bed and keep them safe. There'll be no trouble at all. Trunks isn't convinced. Well, I'm coming with you, just in case. Bulma shrugs. Okay, you can be my bodyguard if you want, not that it matters. And with that, Bulma and Trunks head back up to Capsule Corp. Kakarot's gotten a little bored, and he's been skulking around the lab while they've been disconnecting the pods to look for some clues about Gero, thinking that he might be able to help, and then spots something.
Hey guys, there's a pod that Bulma forgot about. Maybe she wants this too. Dad? I don't think we should be snooping around anymore. We got what we came for. Nah, I got this. What she did was easy. All I gotta do is shut this down and it... Oh.
Kakarot was tapping the console on the pod randomly and activated it. Oh dear. The pod's hatch, emblazoned with the number 16, raises up, and out steps a huge red-haired robot, which is just standing there. Everyone is unsure how to proceed, but this robot knows how. He looks down at the people beneath him and claps his eyes on Kakarot. His eyes light up, and after a few seconds of silence, mutters,
My name is Android 16, and you are Kakarot. Prepare to be eliminated.
Huh? Eliminate? Whoa!
16 rushes Kakarot, and the pair fall out of the open door of the lab, and just downwards. Nobody knows where they went. But back up at the tower, Raditz and Gine can sense that something bad has happened back down on Earth to Kakarot, but there's people to help him right now, and at this point, the two of them are, quite honestly, the weakest of the bunch, relatively speaking. Raditz curses himself. I wish I could help more. We're not strong enough. We? You're forgetting, Raditz. I'm in no condition or inclination to fight. If we're not strong enough, then how can we help? Korin pipes up. Well, there might be a way for you guys to get stronger. Go and check in with Kami up top. There's a room he's got which could be of use to you. That is if he deems you too worthy, that is. Raditz is intrigued, but Gine is still resistant. But right now, this is a plan, and what they need right now is a plan. Any plan. Grandpa Gohan offers to stay with Korin until they get back, and the Saiyans head up to the lookout and visit Kami. When they get there, Kami sensed their arrival and had talked with Korin after communicating with the cat telepathically about the situation.
I know what you're going to ask of me, and I must warn you, it is not an easy proposition. Are you sure you want to know about this room?
Raditz powers up to Super Saiyan in anger and just shouts, "Just tell us, old man! We don't have time for your prattle!" Gine soothes Raditz back down again, and Kami proceeds to explain the workings of the Room of Spirit and Time to Gine and Raditz. After they process the mathematical ramifications, because Saiyans, they're not good with math, Raditz asks if they can bring Grandpa Gohan in to keep them sane.
I'm afraid not. Only 2 people can go in at a time. Nobody else may enter. I hope that you had paid more attention, Raditz, while I was talking.
Raditz curses under his breath, but Gine asks, "Do we really have to do this?"
You don't have to do anything. However, I feel that in the coming hours we are going to need all the help we can get.
Raditz looks to his mother and takes her hand.
It'll be all right, Mother. Come with me.
And with that, the two then embark on a journey into another temporal dimension.
Kakarot, though, wasn't having that great a time. Having been set upon by Android 16, he and the giant red-haired robot are hurtling towards the trees below, with Kakarot not at 100% yet, thanks to his ki still being out of sorts after having to deal with the after effect of the heart virus. Because of Gine's nagging, he was able to take it slightly earlier, staving off a full-blown attack, but he wasn't back to peak fitness yet. This was not good against a machine that was quite clearly not in the mood to compromise. He had one thing on his mind, and that was to fight Kakarot until he had been subdued. What's even more confusing right now is that he can no longer sense Raditz and Gine. They actually went into the Room Spirit in Time, so it just cuts you off entirely. Had whatever harmed their mother earlier taken his brother too? That was a concern, but not as much of a concern as this big red-haired lummox before him. I think that takes priority right now. With all the strength that he can muster, Kakarot just about spins the pair of them around with seconds to spare as they crash into the forest undergrowth below, 16 taking the brunt of the fall damage, and Goku has enough time to just get into his stance, jumping off, and is ready to fight. You know, he actually has the advantage almost? Thinking that 16 may be damaged by the plummet, Kakarot feels confident enough to try and turn into Super Saiyan again, despite him being uncertain whether he could actually hold it. Surely 16 won't take long to finish off. Right? Wrong. 16 simply comes to and gets up as if nothing had happened. You know, 500-foot drop, pfft, nothing.
Kakarot, enemy of the Red Ribbon Army, it is time for you to pay for the heinous act that you committed against our organization.
Kakarot is confused as to what he did, but then remembers his dealings with the likes of Commander Red back in his childhood, as well as his company, his army, when he was a boy.
Huh. You don't look like Commander Red. Well, I mean, your hair does, but not the other stuff. You're way taller.
I am not Commander Red. I am the being designated as Android 16. You are Kakarot, and I am charged to end you.
Kakarot is still in his stance, and then the two of them fight for a brief moment, with 16 having the advantage thanks to, again, Kakarot slowly recovering power. At one point, Kakarot does think that he's managed to outrun the Hulk because, you know, he's way smaller, but he is then struck square in the jaw by a flying rocket punch, and is then hurled to the ground as the rocket arm then wheels around like a homing device, loops in the air, and is now aiming straight for Kakarot's torso, and connects, creating a massive crater within the forest. Kakarot is majorly winded and cannot get up. 16 walks up to Kakarot and collects his arm that's just on the ground next to him before disconnecting his other one, readying his ultimate attack, and you know what that is. 16 looks down at Kakarot without a single emotion flickering across his robotic face.
You fought well, Kakarot, but your victory back then was ultimately worthless. The Red Ribbon Army shall prevail!
Kakarot closes his eyes in readiness, but the attack never happens. A sword finds itself embedded in the torso of 16, causing his whole body to temporarily convulse, and they drop the arm attachments at the same time. Trunks was able to jump in just in the nick of time, thanks to the crater creating a visible sign about where they are right now within the forest. And what didn't help was Kakarot's energy was hard to read thanks to it being not fully recovered, so that made it extra difficult. Trunks then grabs Kakarot's limp body and they manage to fly away, with Kakarot just flying limply. All of this while 16's circuits start to realign and he gets his bearings. By the time 16 has been able to stabilize himself, Trunks and Kakarot are gone. 16 does not get angry though, nor does he give up. He simply just starts to scan the area and start the search anew, as in the original, with Bulma and Vegeta transporting the 2 android pods back to Capsule Corp, with now Trunks and Kakarot catching up with them. Back in the Room of Spirit and Time, Gine and Raditz are completely unaware of the jeopardy that their friends and family are in at present, but they are certainly dealing with a lot of personal reflection and clarity at the moment. From the first moment that they went in, Gine was adamant that she was not going to change her mind about anything, especially regarding fighting with the others at the front line. She had wished to shrink back into the background and live out the rest of her life in peace, as she knew that she was just so close to having that once more. Raditz is not like his younger brother though, all simpering and whingy like a spoiled brat. He is adamant too, and unwilling to bend to his mother's will when it comes to Saiyan pride.
Have you forgotten what it means to be a Saiyan, Mother? You can't give up! We Saiyans are the absolute pinnacle of strength in this galaxy! Why squander that potential?
Gine had shed more than her fair share of tears throughout all of this discussion, but it all comes to a head when she finally says, "I am not like you, son. I may have been once, but not anymore. Listen to yourself." Raditz recoils. This is the first time that his mother's actually pushed back this forcefully. "All you're doing right now is spouting Frieza's garbage. All this talk of strength, identity, and dominating galaxies? That's just what Frieza said. Don't you realize that? You're becoming everything you ever hated. We were all his playthings. Don't you know that? Channeling his own force through us, making us feel special? Well, we're not. I've seen what it's like to live outside of that bubble, and it is something wonderful. Yes, I am a Saiyan, but I'm also an Earthling. I will not fight for the Saiyans, nor their pride, nor for Frieza's trash. I will not fight for the Saiyans, nor for Frieza's trash. I will fight for Earth. That's all you have to realize, son. And until you can understand that, I will not train with you anymore." Gine then just slinks back to the living quarters of the room and promptly ignores Raditz. Raditz is left stunned. What was she going on about? He didn't get it. Sure, he'd managed to experience freedom and independence from the Frieza Force, but his mind was still hardwired in thinking that the Saiyans were the best, no matter what. Something that Frieza was able to capitalize on way back in the day. He is stewing on this thought for many days, until the time comes when he just walks up to his mother and hugs her.
You're right, Mother. We fight for Earth. We fight for everyone out there.
Gine looks up and just smiles at her son, having finally been able to understand why she had been so resistant to fighting just purely for Saiyan pride. It wasn't just about living a life of peace, in ignorance, like being blind to what's out there. She just wanted to live her life as an Earthling, not as a Saiyan who just so happened to live on Earth. And with that, Gine starts to throw herself into the training once more, quickly regaining her stride and filling her son with admiration. And while that's going on, Kami is anxiously watching from afar Cell's continued absorption of all life on Earth. He knows that Raditz and Gine should be strong enough to deal with this menace when they come out, but still, right now, more lives are going to be drunk that needn't have been had Kami just heated his gut earlier, Now, speaking of Cell, he has now started to make his way to his biggest find, his biggest gem, something he'd been lusting for, North City. North City is one of the largest towns that he clapped his eyes on and sensed. He was ready to drink all of the hundreds of thousands of people that were dwelling in that city. Maybe they would actually come close, this whole collective, to the buffet that he had whilst drinking Gine earlier. Since then, he had a real surge in his power. He felt great, he felt fantastic. But then, he spots something in the distance just standing there. It's a tall being who is looking in the sky before looking down right at it. 16 has now spotted Cell, and the two of them are just staring at one another for what seems like an eternity. 16 then speaks.
Identify yourself.
Silence.
Identify yourself.
Silence again.
Identify.
16 is thrown onto the ground by a tail whip as Cell walks up to him.
You really don't recognize me, Android 16? Well, I recognize you as obsolete.
As that chestnut's being set up, Bulma and the others arrive at Capsule Corp with the 2 android pods being taken into her own laboratory and kept under lock and key. Trunks offers to guard the lab himself, but Bulma feels that there's no real need to worry right now. With Jiro gone and 16 seemingly not coming after them, not chasing them really, they have got some time to try and regroup and, more importantly, for Kakarot to recover properly away from any battlefields or any flashpoints. Vegeta is talking with Kakarot, trying to make sense as to why his mother decided to act like a coward.
As far as I'm concerned, she's a traitor to our core beliefs. We Saiyans are born strong and must show other worlds exactly what we're made of.
I don't know. Mom's been living here for longer than she lived on Vegeta, you know. Perhaps she doesn't view herself as a Saiyan anymore.
What? But she's the first ever Super Saiyan in living memory! How could she possibly renounce such power?
Kakarot looks at a nearby picture of he, Bulma, Grandpa Gohan, and his mother from not long after they first met. Bulma had taken that picture to preserve their first ever adventure together. He can see his mother's wistful and yet serene expression. It just seemed to speak to him right now. He gets up and looks at it more closely. He's starting to understand what Raditz is right now. From what he can see, Gine looked happy. She didn't come on the adventure with them both. She knew that she could have dominated Pilaf easily. She was just okay with being at home and just enjoying the world that she had made for herself with Grandpa Gohan and her now family and friends. Now back to 16 and Cell, and the stare down intensifies.
I do not recognize you. For the last time, identify yourself, or else I shall have to—
What? Fire your rocket arms at me? Please. You're such a relic, 16, and also a terrible judge of character. I am your successor, the latest model of Dr. Gero. I am Cell, the Doctor's last and greatest creation.
16 is surprised.
Cell? The only cell that this model has on file is the prototype located in the sublab.
Yes, at least in this timeline. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a very urgent appointment with someone. Or some people in North City over there, so if you don't mind getting out of the way—
16 does not move. Cell is puzzled.
Didn't you hear me, you bag of bolts? Stand aside.
My scan of your being is now complete. Your DNA comprises 10.87% of Kakarot's DNA. These parameters are acceptable.
Yes, I know that's cheesy, but some of you mentioned that the last time I mentioned this kind of thing I didn't mention it, so yeah, it's full of fan service, but come on. Their fight now begins, with it going for a very long time, since the pair of them are relatively equal, but 16 is slowly beginning to flag because of the earlier tussle that he'd had with Kakarot. He hadn't had time to kind of recharge. Cell makes the most of this, and then promptly buries 16 in the dirt, immobilizing his legs with his tail, which he then rips off and regenerates another one. The original tail coils up and then seizes up, leaving 16 unable to get up.
It's been fun, 16, it really has. But I must not miss the chance for this unforgettable luncheon.
Cell turns to North City and flies away, leaving 16 struggling to break free. After a couple of hours, Cell's tail finally loses its energy store and it collapses limp, freeing 16 to get in pursuit of his target. Should he though? Cell is well into his consumption of North City, now stronger than ever, thanks to the added biomass of just a few thousand souls, nothing major. As he's about to try and see if he can drink 3 people at once, you know, because he's bored, he is halted by what feels like a familiar energy. An energy that he can sense inside of himself. Something that he even supped earlier, a real delicacy, not that long ago. Gine and Raditz show up, looking serious and ready for a fight. Gine is looking particularly focused. They may not have been in there the whole day, but it was enough for Gine to discover a helpful power, and for Raditz to further refine his regular Super Saiyan. "Your name is Cell, right?" shouts Gine. Yes, says Cell in a rather confused manner. "This is an intervention." "Cell?" says Gine intensely.
You have a drinking problem! Ha ha ha! High five!
Chips in Raditz, with Gine looking absolutely dumbfounded. I mean, even Cell does for a moment. "It's time that I stepped up and fought for the world I love." And Gine promptly powers up and goes past Super Saiyan and on to another level. She ascends to Super Saiyan Grade 2. Be that as it may,
Cell was still stronger than the original timeline, thanks to Guinea's energy coursing through his biomechanical body. But would that be enough against a Guinea who was even more powerful now? Without any more talking, Guinea powers forward and punches Cell in the gut so hard that it creates a gaping hole right through his torso. Cell, who is more shocked than in pain, can't believe what he is feeling right now. He is simply too overwhelmed to move. Raditz whoops with delight that his mother is now stronger than ever. Cell is now getting angrier with every breath that he takes.
This cannot be. You're supposed to be weak, soft, not ready for this kind of strength. How can you be this strong? How did you do it?
You will never reach your perfect form. I will make sure of it.
She then immediately begins to fight Cell, and despite him powering up as well and fixing the hole in his chest, regeneration, all that, cannot beat Guinea in the slightest. By the time Android 16 arrives, having detected Cell's location, he is surprised to see his target being bested by two others whose powers are greater than both Cell and himself. For now, 16 decides that he will remain in the shadows and observe. If Cell does escape, he will be all over him, but he needn't worry. After more and more beatdowns, Guinea has grown tired of the charade. Like with King Piccolo before, she grabs Cell by the neck and powers up her finisher, something that she crafted in the Room of Spirit and Time, Rebellion Phalanx. This technique is a new one. It's similar to Bardock's attack, Heat Phalanx, and Rebellion Spear, an homage almost to her lost lover. What it entails is Guinea grabbing her opponent and then surging energy through her hand and then creating a beam of light upwards, like you often see in Marvel's Avenger movies. This beam of light is a hot blue key and it shoots upwards for hundreds of miles, totally engulfing the target and vaporizing them, or at least incapacitating them. Cell can feel his body starting to disintegrate. He is screaming with fear before then realizing something and laughing.
This is not the last you will see of me, Saiyan. Mark my words. I will achieve my perfect form.
When the smoke and light clears, Cell is gone. Guinea brings her hands back down, and powers down as well to her base form before Raditz comes by and hugs her like a bear.
What did Cell mean by return? I mean, you burnt him to a crisp. Was he delusional?
Guinea doesn't know what to make of this either. But if you can't detect Cell's energy presence, neither can 16. As far as 16's internal radar can tell, Cell has indeed disappeared and can't be sensed. Either way, Guinea and Raditz decide to head to Capture Corp to tell everyone the good news. Kami's also troubled by Cell's words. How could he be so calm whilst in the midst of such power? He could see the Phalanx arc rise above the clouds, off in the distance, and it looked pretty potent to say the least. Nothing should have survived. Naturally, the group at Capture Corp felt this all happen, and when Guinea gets there, Kakarot is jubilant to hear that Cell is gone, and he was pleased to tell the others that he was feeling much better now, having had the chance to rest up for a bit, after the last effects of the heart virus had worn off. Vegeta, meanwhile, was not thrilled to see Guinea, but he couldn't deny the power she'd exhibited.
You may have won this time, woman, but you have tarnished your beau's legacy.
Guinea, who was pretty relieved and happy, immediately is not so. She looks to Vegeta with an icy glare, one similar to what she had shown Cell just now. Raditz can feel what's about to go down here.
Mother, just ignore him.
Too late. Guinea stands up tall and brushes herself down, knocking all of the dirt from her previous encounter, and then coldly says,
I've had enough of listening to your backward rhetoric. How dare you assume what Bardock would think? How would you know?
Kakarot tries to get in the way to dispel this argument, telling Guinea that they captured the androids and that there's no need to fight right now. Everything's okay, everything had been saved, they can go home and relax. But Guinea is having none of it. Raditz tells Kakarot to move aside as the stare down between Vegeta and Guinea intensifies.
I know what makes Saiyans tick. I am the prince of all Saiyans after all. Your lover would be sickened by your desire to fight for anything other than your pride. This world, it's merely a stepping stone towards our return to glory. He would be ashamed of you. You are a failure.
Raditz can sense what Vegeta is up to. He wants Guinea to relapse, and he feels like it's working. Gine screams out loud and powers back up to grade 2 Super Saiyan. Everyone is distracted by this powering up taking place in the foyer of Capsule Corp to notice anything else, but Vegeta is relishing this fury.
Just as I thought. That drivel was merely words. Unleash that Saiyan pride, woman!
Vegeta powers up too, and what follows is a furious fight, which is so intense that it blows a chunk out of the Capsule Corp building, and the rest of the bystanders have to frantically shield the workers from being fried in the wake of it. The two Saiyans are having an intense battle, one that was even more fierce than what Cell and Gine had shown just before. The two of them are looking more and more worse for wear as they continue, and their energy is fading fast, but Vegeta is getting his point across, despite being on the losing side of it. Gine slams him into the ground and is about to perform another rebellion phalanx on Vegeta before shouting, "Take back everything you said! Take it back or I'll send you to hell, where you belong!" Vegeta smiles weakly.
There it is. You just proved my point. If you had truly eschewed your pride, then my words would have meant nothing to you. You cannot escape your past, and you know it. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, woman.
As soon as he finishes, Gine immediately drops Vegeta and looks horrified. He was right. Despite her resolve to fight for Earth, her Saiyan powers would always drag her back into her past, no matter what she did. She breaks down and cries tears of rage. But before anyone can do anything else, Android 16 arrives in the midst of the carnage at Capsule Corp.
Where is Cell?
Everyone is confused, especially Kakarot.
Cell's gone. What do you want, Android?
16 turns to Kakarot, and despite his directive telling him to eliminate this person right now, there is a more pressing directive, which is a higher priority.
My scanner has detected Cell's presence here. His energy is increasing with every second, but I cannot get visual. Where is he?
Nobody can answer this. Raditz then pipes up.
Listen, you tin can! Cell isn't here! Mother vaporized him! There's not a trace of him left!
Negative, Saiyan. He is still alive.
An explosion of energy rocks the remainder of the building, proving 16's point. And then a shrill pierces the room.
Indeed I am!
Cell was right there and covered in a white glow mixed with green sparks. He was powering up to a level nobody could comprehend. His tail was engorged, like something was traversing down it. Trunks and 16 are aghast. He'd done it. He'd found the androids and was about to become perfect. When the dust cleared, Cell is present in his perfect body and smirking menacingly.
I'm sorry, what was that, Gine? About me never attaining my perfect form? You might want to rephrase that. No, wait. In fact, save your breath.
Cell aims a beam at Gine, but Raditz gets in the way and it goes through his arm, but protects his mother. Vegeta is shocked.
How did you survive?
Cell looks nonplussed.
Simple. I hitched a ride on that one over there. The one cowering for her life. You see, not everything about me was wiped off the planet. There was one thing that survived. My nucleus.
Gine looks to her hand. What was left of Cell had clung onto her hand, microscopic in size, without her noticing.
I must thank you for that lift, Gine. Without it, I may never have found my siblings. And despite them not having energy to read, they were shut down, I could just feel them close by. It's a special connection that we have, my brother and sister. We would always become one. And it's all thanks to you, Saiyan. Especially that purge. Goodness, I feel stronger than ever.
Nobody has a clue about what's going to happen next, but Cell throws them a bone.
I can sense that you all stand no chance against me in my present state. I'm far too strong for you. However, I'm feeling rather generous. Since you all gave me so much time to feast on the people of this world, I will return the favor. I will give you time to toughen up and face me once more. This time for the fate of this dirtball.
Gine chooses to waive this offer and powers back up to grade 2, attempting to punch Cell in the stomach like she did the last time, but this time it does nothing.
Really, Gine? You aim for the same exact spot? What an amateur.
He then takes both his hands and slams them both atop her head. Cell's Saiyan DNA, including that extra boost from Gine, has gotten him fired up for battle.
If that's your strongest example, then you must be desperate, and I hope that you can give me something more exciting before I wipe the slate clean. The slate being this planet. Ta-ta!
Cell flies away, leaving the gang to lick their wounds and process what just happened. From under their very nose, Cell had not only escaped being erased, but had also reached his goal whilst the Saiyans were bickering. Now, to top it all off, they were being toyed with, and the full extent of Cell's power remains somewhat a complete mystery. They have no clue how strong they need to become to beat him. Everything is completely vague. We resume our story with Gine slumped on the floor, crying her eyes out and utterly ruined. Nobody can really comprehend what just happened, but one thing was for sure, they were dealing with a being that was completely alien to them, and yet not because he was derived from their powers. Nobody could anticipate this happening. Also, nobody could blame Gine for not noticing Cell on her clothes or what was left of him. They had no clue how he worked. That is except for Vegeta, who is more than keen to rub salt into the wound. He will not let her forget her failings right now.
All of this, it's your fault.
Gine ignores this for a moment, since she has heard this all before. Just now, in fact.
If it hadn't been for your lack of attention, your absolute disregard for your pride, you wouldn't have led Cell straight to his prize. You were an excuse for a Saiyan back then on Vegeta, and you're even more of an excuse now. Like I said before, you are a total and utter failure.
Raditz then promptly gets up from comforting his mother, calmly powers up to Super Saiyan, walks past Vegeta, and then knocks him out cold without even saying a word. Kakarot walks over to his mother and tries to take up the comforting duties. However, before he can really get started trying to console her, Gine gets up and motions for Kakarot to come with her, silently. Raditz starts to walk with them, assuming that he's along too, but she puts a hand out and shakes her head. Not now, son. This is a conversation that only Gine and Kakarot will be privy to. The rest of the gang decide to take the now unconscious Vegeta and promptly lock him in the gravity chamber to cool off, because he will most likely be quite angry when he comes to. Android 16 picks up the prince, tosses him inside the chamber, and stands outside the door. Why is he doing this? Wasn't his mission to destroy Kakarot? What happened to that? He made it pretty clear before, very clear. The droid can sense this confusion and explains his position.
Cell is a much greater threat at this time, and Kakarot's mother made me realize that. She has earned my respect. Thusly, I will do what is necessary for her to not be harmed, and that includes emotional harm.
He motions to Vegeta's frame on the floor of the chamber. Everybody gets it now, and they nod as they bolt the doors shut. 16 walks towards the frame of the door and stands there. As that's going on, Gine and Kakarot have gone outside. Kakarot, we've got to go. Go? Where? Train. Train harder than either of us have done before. Kakarot is blindsided by this somber mood. I mean, sure, it was great to hear his mother wanting to train with him and her suggesting this, not him. But on the other hand, it felt a little hollow. This was not going to be your typical sparring session or anything like that. This felt different this time. It was like her heart wasn't in it. It's just all wrong. Come with me, son. Gine lifts up into the air and flies off in the direction of the lookout. Kakarot follows, albeit apprehensively. When they arrive at said lookout, Kami is there, and he could have sensed everything going on, as well as what Gine had in mind.
The chamber's ready for you, Gine. Remember, you cannot use it for a third time.
I won't need it after all this is done. Kakarot is getting very worried by this, not sure whether he actually wants to train with his mother anymore.
Kakarot, you might remember this room from your training long ago. Hopefully you'll be able to stomach it this time.
Kami's trying to lighten the mood, and Kakarot puts on a fake smile. Yeah, I hope so. Gine walks into the room with the door left open, Mr. Popo motioning for Kakarot to follow. Hey, Kami?
Yes?
What's going on with my mom? Kami closes his eyes and sighs.
She's doing what she feels that she must do. Vegeta's words hurt her greatly. I feel that a part of her spirit is irreparably damaged.
Kakarot! Kami stops talking, Gine shouting from behind, looking nervous, and motions for the Saiyan to go inside already. He gulps and does so, the door slamming shut behind him. With their energies disappearing at once, Raditz realizes where they've gone and turns to face the rest of the Dragon team.
Things have gotten serious, everyone! My mother and brother are off training in the Room of Spirit and Time. That means that we have to train ourselves hard to ensure that Cell doesn't try any funny business whilst they are in there. You never know what he might do. Same goes for Vegeta. After what he tried to do to my mother, I'm surprised that I haven't clasped my hands around his tiny throat already.
Now, Trunks would tell Raditz to cut out that talk about his father, but right now, he feels the same way pretty much, albeit, less forward.
If he likes that blasted chamber so much, he can have it all to himself.
Gohan is determined to train as well, and he asks his Uncle Raditz if he can train with him too in that room. Raditz, who'd only just gotten to the fact that he was an uncle and being called one, is actually rather touched by this, that the kid wants to, and he accepts the request.
Ideally, your father or grandmother should be training you, but you know what? As your uncle, I will gladly step in and do what I can.
They fist bump, the boy excited to get to spend some time with his uncle. Man, he's going to be missing that kid when all this is said and done. Cell, in the depths of the prairies, is busy putting together his arena for the Cell Games. As he is preparing this battleground, he takes a moment to try and sense all the energies around him, and he likes what he senses. How flustered they all are. Gine and Kakarot have disappeared, but he remembers the last time that this happened and what it resulted in, Gine returning stronger than ever. He assumes that the same thing might happen here.
Well, seems like I won't be as bored as I thought I would be. Good. I was starting to worry, what with all the calamity that's been going on right now, that they'll just fall over like nothing.
With the inclusion of Gine's DNA, this Cell is a little more emotionally attuned than before, which means he has a little more awareness of how to read people, and that will prove to be quite useful in a battle situation. It means that his Frieza has got a very fascinating counterweight going for it. Back in the chamber, the mood is absolutely dire. Gine hasn't smiled in weeks, all of said action done by Kakarot, and even that was starting to diminish. The morale was low. This was definitely not like the early days of the two of them training, not even during the time of the Namek saga, when Kakarot could really sense a feeling of vigor and pride, despite Gine thinking that she was done. Here, she's just going through the motions. It's not the same. The mother that he had known all his life was replaced with some kind of robotic facsimile of her. This isn't the same turmoil that we saw with Raditz, like in the earlier chapters. This version of the Saiyan mother seemed to just be utterly devoid of her charm and personality. It was almost like Vegeta had just wasted it with words, rather than punches or energy blasts. One day, Kakarot has reached breaking point, and he confronts his mother and demands for her to tell him what is wrong. After trying to brush this off for months, Gine cannot resist ignoring her son any longer. She mutters, "I'm tired." "You're what?" "Tired. Tired of all of this training and defending the Earth. I wasn't made for this. I was meant to be a cook of all things." Kakarot then mentions that they could always just leave the chamber if that's what she wants, if she wants to call it quits. Gine shakes her head, tears streaming down her face. "I can't. It's my fault Cell's still out there. I have to beat him, to right this wrong. Only then can I rest and be done with all this." Kakarot tries to tell her that she can still fight after this. "No! No more trying to rope me into this! Kakarot, I am done! I couldn't fight as a Saiyan. I couldn't fight as a defender of Earth. What am I? What am I supposed to be?" She breaks down at this and sobs uncontrollably. Kakarot walks up to her and bends down to get down to her level. "Okay." Gine stops crying. "What was that?" "Okay, you can stop. Just do this one last bit of training for me, would you? And I won't ask again after this, Mom." Now, she didn't expect that. It was such a refreshing thing to hear. I mean, granted, it wasn't going to cheer her up per se, but to hear these words right now from her son, who had been her biggest reason to keep on training, stretching her limits, stretching all this out for way longer than she wanted to or what she bargained for, okay, that was a weight off her mind. At last, it seemed like she could actually, realistically, stop, finally. Spend the last couple of decades of her prime in peace, away from the front line. Gine hugs her son slowly, and then promises to train as hard as she can, and will give it her all for him, one last time. Kakarot nods and accepts these terms. It may be their last time training together, but he's gonna make sure that this is a training session to remember, and one that she can be proud of in the years to come. Now let's get back to Earth. Vegeta, who had regained consciousness, finds himself locked in the gravity chamber. Confused as to how he even got here. Oh well, whatever. He walks over to the door and tries to open it. Nothing. It won't unlock. That's odd. He tries again. Nothing. He slams the console next to the door. Still nothing. He then shouts out for someone to come and open the door for him.
Negative,
Says a robotic voice outside.
my orders are to ensure that your training is uninterrupted.
Listen here, you bag of bolts! I don't want to train right now! I need to eat! I am hungry!
With these words, a hatch opens nearby. Where normally training droids would appear for the Saiyan, a bag of food drops onto the floor, and a video screen appears. It's Bulma on the other end.
Rise and shine, honey. You better get yourself prepared for your epic training session. It's gonna be a long one.
Training... what? Vegeta is getting annoyed by all this ambiguity.
Somebody better explain to me what's going on here, or else I'll destroy this room and everyone in the vicinity!
My, that would help your training destroying the gravity chamber like that, like a big baby. Also, you might want to double check that, because doing so might generate a miniature black hole that could swallow up the whole city if you're not careful. Anyway, we got about 9 days or so before Cell's little matchup begins, so you better get started with the training. I won't interrupt you.
The screen goes blank, and Vegeta is left in a stunned silence.
He screams and goes Super Saiyan.
Outside the room, Trunks is looking a little nervous. Are you sure this is for the best, Mom?
All he does is train, so what else is new?
The next day, Gine and Kakarot emerge from the chamber, their clothes battered and torn, but they are both in their Super Saiyan state, what we know as full power Super Saiyan. They have been able to focus their power and sustain it, which is like in the original. When they exit, they are surprised to see Raditz and Gohan there, already there to meet them. Raditz explains that Gohan requested that he train with his uncle, to which Goku is surprised to hear this.
Please, Dad, I want to do my part for the planet. I would ask you to help me, but you and Grandma are busy.
Kakarot looks to his brother and nods.
Take good care of him, bro. I want him back in one piece.
You got it! Raditz giving him a thumbs up, and then gives his mother a big hug. Nervously at first, not sure what the mood is right now, but yeah, it's all good.
It's good to see you, Raditz. Give it all you got in there. I want you and my grandson to end up being stronger than me after all this.
The tall Saiyan is surprised to hear this new spirit. He turns to Kakarot to ask what happened in there, and his brother explains that they managed to settle things out inside, and that both of them have come on leaps and bounds. In any case, the next week or so is going to be very interesting to witness. She had done her part, more than what she'd ever planned to do with her life when she was just a kid. Finally, her son, who had been understandably the one to actually make her carry on against her will most of the time, got the bigger picture. And after this tussle with Cell, with whom she felt personally responsible because she kinda caused it, was over, she would hang up her fighting arms for good and tend to Grandpa Gohan as well as herself for the rest of her days. Speaking of, with Kakarot getting busy with Chi-Chi, using their remaining time together, Gine is busy with her own project. And that is tending to her herb garden and checking what ingredients she could use for tonight's meal with the family. It was her day to cook for the lot of them after all, and she was personally quite excited at what she could conjure up. This had been a relaxing few days. Gine had been able to switch off her brain and not train at all. She had been able to break through into the power of Super Saiyan Grade 4 as well as her son, but all she could do now was try and get her mind into some kind of tranquil state, Grandpa Gohan assisting her with that to try and ready herself for the upcoming Cell games. Yes, we are getting the Cell games. The gang had watched the news to see the Bugman take it over and proclaim the games, as well as the date that they would take place on. It was important for Gine to calm down, because Cell made an aside aimed directly at her. I do sincerely hope that my opponents are in the right state of mind, as well as making sure that no princes wind them up beforehand. That really hit hard, and Gine, for once, decided to heed Cell's advice. When she has brought back the herbs to her kitchen to cook, Grandpa Gohan is assisting her with washing them ready for later.
My dear, how do you feel right now?
She pauses for a second, figuring out a response. She has one. Tired, but it's a good kind of tired.
Oh?
Yeah, I know I've done my part, and all I can do now is wait. I know Kakarot can win out over that monster, and then my time, being on the front line, will be but a distant memory. There's something I need to tell you, Gohan. Gohan looks concerned, but willing to listen. We Saiyans, we age weirdly. You probably are curious why. Even though I'm over 50 years old, I look practically the same the day I broke that door over there. She tilts the head over to the door, which still bears the handiwork on it of the Saiyan even to this day. It comes back around soon enough. I can feel it. Just a hint, but it's there. In a couple of decades, I'll rapidly deteriorate. I'll grow old and broken. And then...
I understand.
Gine's caught by surprise.
I understand your worries. You do not need to say any more. Whatever you wish to do, I'm behind you. If you want, we can be old coots together.
Gine lets out a huge laugh and beams. This had actually been the first time she laughed in weeks. It felt good. Hopefully there'll be more times like this to come. The two of them can indeed grow old together. The dinner later that night was a very wholesome affair. At this time, Raditz and Gohan had emerged from the Room of Spirit in time, and were indeed stronger than ever, both remaining in their Super Saiyan Grade 4 forms, much to the dismay of Chi-Chi, as you will be able to gather if you recall the original story. Kakarot had done this also, so to have 3 blonde-haired beings at the table was pretty irksome for her. I mean, at least Gine had not done the same. She had chosen to forego that acclimation training, thinking that she would not be needed unless things got really bad. As far as she was concerned, she had been there to help better her son, and what she had gained was a bonus. All this, the family time right now, she loved that. Her 2 sons, her daughter-in-law, as well as her grandson and adopted father, all in the same room. Now this was truly living. This was worth protecting. She had wondered about whether Bardock would enjoy this if he were around. To see his 2 boys all grown up and stronger than any other Saiyan in history, maybe even stronger than that Yamoshi guy from all those legends. To see her excel herself and prove those doubters wrong. He probably would be very proud, but also indifferent to the loving atmosphere. Gine was realistic like that. She knew that this was definitely not her former beau's scene. The strength though, yeah, he could get behind that at least. She's just at the moment soaking in the love of the room as she slowly eats her meal. She ponders, casually, what she's going to cook up next. There is now but 1 day left to go before the Cell Games. Gine decides to take a little trip to visit Cell, the Bugman whose arena had been completed without any requirement for patchwork since her arrival. He looks absolutely devilish.
My! Why, if it isn't the world's strongest mother! What brings you here? Ah, glorious battle isn't until tomorrow. Don't tell me you forgot to move the clocks forward.
Gine is ignoring Cell's frippery and gets straight to the point. I have no intention to fight you, Cell. Not now, not ever. My children will make light work of you. I know they will. Cell is standing there, a small smirk forming on his perfect jaw.
Is that it? You came all this way to try and scare me? I fear that your visit was redundant. I know they are strong. I know that already. I do not fear it. I relish it. It is all that I crave.
You mean you're not trying to destroy the planet? Cell scratches his nose, nonchalantly.
Not as such, no. I mean, if it happens, it happens. What I do want, though, is a good, long, hard battle. Most of my DNA is comprised of you Saiyans. Your son's enthusiasm to fight strong people, the prince's pride, your taller son's cunning, and then there's you. Your pragmatism, matched only by your desire for fairness and balance. It's quite interesting, actually, now that I've had time to play with these emotions. They had been suppressed in my more primitive states, but now that I have achieved perfection and can fully comprehend them,
They've really become quite fascinating. Gine actually senses hope. Perhaps her DNA, her influence in cell structure will be enough to try and make Cell ultimately spare the planet. Maybe just go away.
Well, then you must understand why I don't want to fight you. You should know, because you're me.
Oh, I do understand. And I despise it. Just because I possess your traits doesn't mean that I accept them without question. It sickens me to think that you are so quick to deny your own legacy. Ah, yes, she forgot.
Vegeta's in there.
Let me be clear. I will be fighting you all tomorrow. As for this planet, I'll see how I feel afterwards. Okay? Without saying a word, Gine just turns around and flies back home. Her plan had failed. She had tried to reason with Cell and got nowhere. The next day, the gang arrive at the arena, all ready to face Cell. Vegeta, whose clothes had seen better days, was there too. He had been let out to train the Rumor Spirit in time for a day. Yesterday. He was not speaking to anyone though, not even Trunks. As far as he was concerned, he was one of the instigators of this ironic punishment. Android 16 had also been tinkered with in the meantime. He had gotten some upgrades courtesy of Bulma to his robotic body, mostly procured in order to keep up with Vegeta in case he chose to rebel and tried to escape during his time in the gravity chamber. Of course, he wasn't strong enough to beat Cell or anything like that, but it was more than what he had originally. Trunks had also been in the Rumor Spirit in time, but had spread this out over multiple days to make up a total of 1 year in there, using his spare time in there at bit by bit when he wasn't guarding the room. We also have the champ showing up, of course, I mean, we can't miss that. Him affirming that the 24th World Martial Arts Tournament had indeed occurred. Kakarot was quite happy to see the person who had succeeded him as being the champion, but Cell hijacks the scene. Welcome one and all. I trust that you have prepared yourself. I had a very interesting discussion yesterday with that one over there. He points to Gine, the camera's then turning to her, and she pretends to ignore the attention. She even tried to make me go away, hoping that I had a soft side. Well, I hate to say it, I don't have one. What I have is a real side, and that is telling me to spare the niceties and get straight to the point. And since you were so keen to try and quell me earlier, why don't you have the pleasure of going first? He points again to the mother, and this time everyone is shocked. Vegeta just smirks evilly. That'll show her. Kakarot tries to delay this and offers to go first, but Cell shakes his head and finger. No. I will get to you soon enough, Kakarot. But your mother was so keen to try and eschew this little battle, then I thought I would let her go first, so that means she could leave first, you know? Not make her hang around like a bad smell. I know in her heart of hearts she doesn't want to be here. Gine is trembling. She had really done it now. By trying to avoid all of this, she'd actually put herself in the crosshairs. However, there is a tiny little interlude that steps in.
Hey! That's enough out of you, buggy boy! I get to say who goes first, me being the champion of the world, and you, Cell, are about to be humbled by my incredible feats of human strength!
Cell looks to him with a cursory glance. Really?
Well, yeah!
Go on then. Prove it. Prove to me you are the world's champion. Hercule gulps, not expecting this bravado, but he still gets into position. He charges forward and prepares a mighty punch, which gets caught, him being raised into the air, Cell not averting his gaze, and then throws him into a nearby cliffside. The crew are left stunned. Hercule had been felled in one move. Naturally, we get his excuses later, and that's enough to quell the crowd's fear. Meanwhile, Gine is busy steeling herself up. She knows what she has to do. She puts one foot in the ring. Raditz trying to grab her arm, pulling her back.
Mother, don't listen to him! Let me go instead! You don't stand a chance!
Gine turns her face back to her son. Her face is bizarrely calm. A serenity which is meant to look assuring to her son, but to Raditz, it's horrifying. It was like she just tuned out, checked out of reality, and knew that her time was over. I got us into this, son. I'll get us out. I love you. Without another word, she tugs her arm out of Raditz's grasp and slowly walks towards Cell. Whilst in mid-walk, Gine powers up to full power Super Saiyan, her face still in a rather lucid expression. She looks, quite frankly, delirious. Like some kind of fog had clouded her mind and better judgment. Nobody had seen this before, except for one. Kakarot had seen this in the Room of Spirit and Time, at the time of his mother's lowest ebb. She had tried to cope with all of his stressful training by harking back to Gohan's talk about meditation. When she was not out of it, when they were just having some downtime in the chamber, she explained that Grandpa Gohan had tried to teach her meditation. She had downplayed it before, never thinking she would ever need to use it, but here she was. It was the thing that kept her going. There were many times in the chamber that she just wanted to simply walk out and leave her son to it, but by harking back to Gohan's memory and decoupling her active mind from her Saiyan instinct, letting that go to the fore, it allowed her to relax and press on with whatever life threw at her. It was vital if she were to ever prove useful in the here and now. Vegeta had driven her to this. As for Vegeta, he was trying to keep a brave face, but the sight of Gine essentially walking towards her doom with a look of mild euphoria unnerved him more than the beatdown that she had given him just a few weeks ago. He wasn't sure about what to think, but whatever it was, it gave him pause for thought.
Make our race proud.
Even Cell surprised.
You really care about this world that much? You're willing to end your life for it? In that case,
He gets into Gine's stance, almost patronizing her.
I'll try not to rough it up too much.
She reciprocates, and the two of them are staring each other down before leaping forward, and the fight begins. The battle is furious, and initially, it's actually pretty even. Despite Cell's Zenkai making him far stronger than the base perfect Cell, Gine was holding her own, her lucid fighting style making her less predictable than the Bugman had expected. It's all down to the fact that he was anticipating her more aggressive style when she was in Super Saiyan Grade 2 from when they fought before. And now, to see the complete opposite here had thrown him for a loop. He didn't like it, Gine having the advantage. I mean, it was a small one, but it was an advantage nonetheless. Her family are watching all this happen with serious expressions. Gine's final battle was going to be her most intense one yet. She was lucky before. She had the advantage in some way, and a quite sizable one when the fight usually began. Here though, it wasn't like that. This was razor thin. She knew that she wouldn't last in this fight, but she knew if she could do her bit, like she did with Frieza, she will have made something of her life. At least somewhat atoned for her earlier mistake in letting Cell's nucleus live. The fight presses on. Cell slowly being worn down, but starting to turn the tide in his favour. Everyone can sense it. He could read Gine like a book. All except for one page. She had learnt the Rebellion Phalanx after Cell had been programmed, and he didn't really have a time to really understand it. And so, she still had that over him. And sure enough, she decides now is the time to use it. With a swoopy move, she grabs Cell and prepares the attack. Cell is surprised, but accepts this.
Not bad, Gine. This fight has been truly special. I expected you to falter throughout all this, but you've really stepped up and made your kind proud.
Gine is taken aback by this. This is enough to stir her from her lucid state, and this sudden realization overwhelms her. In that moment, she didn't want to make her kind proud. She wanted to make herself proud, her family proud. In a flash, she powers up to 100%, burning heaps of energy in the process, more than what is healthy, enough to terrify her sons and grandson, and even terrify Grandpa Gohan, who is busy sitting in a house hundreds of miles away. She was going to go out in a blaze of glory. This is for my family. Boom! The Max Rebellion Phalanx engulfs the arena. Both her and Cell are consumed, leaving everyone fearful for what's happening. It can be seen from space, the arc surging outwards into the black unknown. When the light dissipates, all that is left is Gine standing in the same position, looking absolutely bruised and bloodied, looking absolutely devastated. And her holding what's left of the torso of Cell. Had she won? No. In seconds, Cell regenerates to his full form. He looks down at Gine, her powered back down to her base form, having no energy left. He smiles.
This was fun. You have earned my respect. But I'm afraid to say, your time is up.
He aims a blast at Gine, her barely able to lift her head, tears streaming down her face, as well as blood. Our story continues with Gine crying silently and her face covered in injuries. Cell, who had been through a lot, looked almost in mint condition, albeit with some shortness of breath, after regenerating from just a torso. I mean, that does take a lot out of you. Gine was on the ground, also gasping for breath, in between her anguished tears. Cell closes his eyes and raises his hand, about to blast the mother away, like it was some sort of duty, not really getting any enjoyment out of this. The air around them begins to fizz and spark, the aura of Cell beginning to formulate a projectile, ready to do its deed of ridding Earth of Gine's physical form.
This is the end for you, Saiyan. This has been a rather momentous experience. I thank you. It's been fun.
Gine gets up to her feet and presses her head next to the ball of energy, almost accepting her fate. Everybody is transfixed with fear, and even Cell is caught for a loop. He doesn't know what to say or do, but somebody else does. Cell is sent flying and out of his own ring. Cell was eliminated from his own Cell games, from a ring out. Who had come to Gine's aid? Was it Kakarot? Was it Raditz? No, it was Vegeta. The mother, out of sheer astonishment, collapses back to the ground again, beginning to cough and splutter, having ceased to be breathing, realizing her fate, thinking no point, but this took the wind out of her. The prince, not looking at her, speaks.
You have made your point. No low-class warrior would have done what you have just done. I am proud to call you a Saiyan. Now rest. I will take it from here.
Gine coughs and looks up to Vegeta. And if you think that she's going to be grateful about this, then you got another thing coming, as does the prince.
I don't need your pity. I have made peace with my fate. Now what? I get to live for a few minutes more whilst that monster tears us all apart. If what you're looking for is thanks, nothing you can say or do will ever make up for the pain you have caused me and my family. Go stroke your own ego. I don't care.
With that, Gine stumbles her way to the edge of the ring, jumps out, and into the arms of her son. Vegeta is left furious. However, instead of taking it out on the ungrateful cow, he instead has to aim it at the raging Bugman. Despite being eliminated by his own rules, Cell gets back into the ring. I think he's done playing by the rules. Jimmy Firecracker is stating that, oh no, he's done an illegal move! But Cell is paying no attention to these jabbering words. In an explosion of anger, a chunk of the stadium is vaporized, and Cell walks out from the Dust Bowl and flames towards the prince.
You shouldn't have done that, Vegeta. I grew weary of that wench's stalling tactics. It's time for me to do what she couldn't, and remove every last ounce of your being from my sight.
Cell looks not only unimpressed, but also disgusted.
I take no joy from fighting you.
What?
Exclaims the prince. You are nothing. Gine stepped up despite knowing her efforts would be for naught. She is more of a Saiyan than you will ever be. She has earned my respect, whereas you...
Vegeta throws a punch in Cell's direction, but is met with air, and then an elbow to the head.
Have earned nothing but my disdain.
The resulting fight between Cell and Vegeta is brief, but frenetic. If you think it's going to be a walk in the park, then think again. Thanks to Vegeta having nothing to do but train in his effective isolation, for quite a long time, he had managed to break through the barrier of Super Saiyan Grade 3 and reach the same full power Super Saiyan level that Kakarot, Gine and Gohan had done. This was no easy road to victory for Cell, but neither was it a turning point for our heroes. Vegeta isn't going to win. Thanks to his major regeneration a couple of weeks back, and now this one from a pile of ab muscles, Cell was stronger than ever. And remember, this is super perfect Cell we're dealing with here. But he was getting tired. For now though, he was winning against this short stack. That said stack was getting angry at being made a fool, and he leaps up to the skies to prepare his own ultimate technique that would be way stronger than that woman's idiotic move. Enter the final flash. Despite Cell being a little drained, he chooses not to run away from it, but take it. He mimics Vegeta and outstretches his arms before powering up a Kamehameha.
You don't seriously think that I'm going to be letting you show off, do you? You're even more of a laughingstock than I had thought, Vegeta. Have a taste of your own medicine.
With that, we get a beam struggle between the final flash and Kamehameha. The dueling beams tussle for a while before suddenly, the prince's attack starts to make headway. Vegeta can sense his power pushing through.
It's over, Cell! I have the upper hand. Now to end this. Ha!
The final flash bursts again and breaks through the key of Cell and envelops him. With that, the entire stadium is destroyed, and the camera that was transmitting the games to the world is broken. The Earth is now dark. Minutes pass, and Vegeta thinks he has the win. He powers down and cannot sense Cell's energy. He, in his mind, had won. He lands back down on the ground and surveys the land around him, before laughing out loud in a pure alpha fashion.
Was that it? What a joke. I should have been the one to face him from the start. Why were you even here, woman? Tell me, why did you even bother?
Gine is only just regaining consciousness after being comforted by Raditz, nobody choosing to indulge the prince's bluster. However, before he can shout any more grand gestures and obscenities, Cell blasts a hole through Vegeta's chest.
Would you just shut up?
Cell was back and he was nettled. He looked like he hadn't been scratched. Vegeta is left speechless, obviously, gasping for breath, before turning around to face the Bugman.
How?
It's quite simple. I knew you were going to keep that struggle going for hours and hours to stroke your own pride. So, I just got it over with. It's far simpler than having to pander to your obsessive nature. As Cell is busy tearing down the prince's very fabric of reality, Android 16 approaches Raditz.
It is no longer safe for your mother to stay here. Allow me to take her back to Capsule Corp for treatment.
Raditz thinks about this, but before he can respond, Gine places a hand on 16's leg.
No, I wish to stay. Boys, go help Vegeta.
Mother, why? He doesn't deserve our help. He wronged you so cruelly. Why in Kami's name would you show mercy when he clearly doesn't know the meaning of the word?
Earth is more important than what I want. 16, be ready. Your baby will need a nap soon enough.
16 smiles.
Understood.
As Cell prepares to tear more holes in Vegeta, the Saiyan disappears from view. Cell is looking around for answers, and then sees Raditz in the distance, carrying the crippled prince, and then pulling a face.
Ha ha! Finders keepers!
Before disappearing again. With Cell scrambling to find out what happened, he is then met with 2 punches to the gut from a newly instant transmitted pair, Kakarot and Gohan. They were both powered up too, and looking focused. If you think that Kakarot's going to be throwing him a sensu bean to have a good fight, you don't do that if you mess with Gine. Oh no, you don't remember what happened with Frieza. Now distracted by these two, Raditz returns to 16's side with Vegeta and delivers his charge to the Brobot.
There! Now get him out of here! He's caused enough trouble to last a lifetime! Let's hope said lifetime indeed lasts a good long life.
Very well. I shall carry this objective out. Good luck, Saiyans.
With that, 16 takes Vegeta back to Capsule Corp, undetected by Cell thanks to his robotic makeup and the fact that Vegeta's barely putting out any energy. Raditz watches the pair disappear from view, not exactly happy with the prince getting an early bath.
Count your lucky stars, Prince. If it were up to me, then it's probably best you never know.
Raditz resumes caring for his mother, but then deciding to transmit them both to a point further away from the action for their safety. As they settle down a good distance away, Gine opens her eyes and can see 2 golden auras fighting Cell, and she smiles.
Go make your mama proud, boys.
The action cuts back to Cell, and he is now facing a tough time of it. Losing energy fast, he is having difficulty keeping up with Kakarot and Gohan.
How is this possible? I'm supposed to be the perfect being! How are you weaklings doing this?
Gohan is the one to pipe up this time.
It's obvious. Your showboating has proven to be your undoing. In other words, you shouldn't have let Vegeta blast you to bits.
Kakarot nods and powers up again, before another flurry of blows has descended upon Cell. The Bugman has had enough. He flies backwards and charges up another Kamehameha, this one much bigger than the previous. Gine's eyes widen and she looks fearful.
He's serious this time.
What? What do you mean, Mother?
Raditz, I need you to do something.
She then tells Raditz what he needs to do, and he takes it in, not sure what to expect. The Kamehameha from Cell is met by a father-son Kamehameha, and the giant blasts dominate the scene. Almost everything is dwarfed by this colossal ball of energy. Cell is irate beyond belief.
How is this for showboating? When I am through with you, there will be nothing left of this pitiful world. I am perfect! Perfection personified!
Cell has clearly got a screw loose. Kakarot and Gohan hunker down and give it their all. Gohan going so far at one point that his hair flashes backwards for a second, spikier than usual, before resuming its regular Super Saiyan shape. Kakarot noticed this, and he knew that his son was giving his all and knocking on the door of a potential future power. Cell is getting desperate. Whatever he's doing isn't getting anywhere. But then he remembers. Gine went all out against him, and that got results, so maybe instead of waiting for them to tire out, yes, one last blaze of glory, just like Gine did. That'll do it. That'll be enough to end these two, and then afterwards, the other two will be easy pickings. A blast of power surges forward, and is enough to catch Kakarot and Gohan napping, and almost overwhelms them. In that instant, the planet sharply intakes a breath. Is it over? No. In that moment, Raditz and Gine transmit to their family's side.
Raditz? Mom?
You seriously think we would let you hog the limelight? Think again, bro.
Boys, let's show them what the Son family can really do.
All three of her progeny nod before she and Raditz power up their own Kamehameha, using every last ounce of strength they have got going. Cell did not see this coming. With this sudden burst of power, it's now Cell who is overwhelmed, and he can feel the intense heat of the Son Kamehameha wash over him and his body disintegrating. He cannot come back from this. Like Gine did earlier, he closes his eyes and accepts his fate.
Well done, Son Gine.
Before his mind is torn asunder and he is no more.
Seconds later, the beams shrink until the natural light of the sun resumes its influence, and the Son family take in the scene. There is no trace of Cell left, not one single iota. They are naturally cautious, and Kakarot chooses now to shout out to the heavens.
King Kai, is it over? Is Cell truly gone?
There is a pause before King Kai jovially responds.
Yeah, that's a go there, buddy. You wipe the floor with him.
The four then collapse to the floor, laughing out of sheer relief. After catching their breath, Raditz transmits the four of them back to Capsule Corp and arrive at the same time as 16 does, carrying the unconscious Vegeta.
I take it that you being here means that Cell is no longer alive.
Gohan gives 16 a thumbs up.
Excellent. Today is a joyous day.
Gine also gives 16 a thumbs up before falling over. Yeah, somebody get her a sensory beam, please. Several days pass, and the gang are all fully recovered from their ordeal. Gine is back at Mount Paozu cooking up a storm, with Grandpa Gohan fully embracing this routine that she had grown to love. Now with Cell gone, she can now rest and live out the rest of her days with this sage old man by her side. There is a knock on the door, though. It's Raditz, accompanied by Launch. Launch is carrying a suitcase.
What's with the luggage, Launch? Are you two moving in together? Oh my goodness! Oh my, things are happening so fast!
Gine is misty-eyed at the thought of her eldest perhaps marrying this woman. Having a granddaughter, maybe? Oh, she'd love a granddaughter. She pictured this moment ever since Raditz returned.
Well, not exactly. That's why I'm here. I have something to tell you, Mother.
Can it wait until after dinner?
Raditz can smell the food and mulls this over.
Do you even need to ask?
It turns out that Raditz is planning to leave, and Launch was going to go with him.
Do you really have to go? Why can't you settle down and start a family here? Surely you're tired of wandering around space after all this time.
Like father, like son, I'm afraid. I've got the itch to explore again. I've been in one place too long. Now that things have calmed down here, I don't think that Kakarot would want me here cramping his style. Besides, it's not like I'm going alone.
He pats Launch on the shoulder.
Yeah, I ain't let him get away that easy. You know, I want to see space. And I ain't exactly got much going for me here, what with my, brushes with the law, if you know what I mean.
Raditz laughs.
There's a lot to see and do, as well as lives to protect. I'm still a freedom fighter, and now with this new strength, nothing will stand in my way of saving the weak and ending the cruel. There, and you want to show Vegeta how wrong he was in making fun of you before,
says a sly Launch.
Yeah, that too.
His mother laughs and nods.
You're right. You are your father's son, Raditz. Bardock would be proud of you. Just promise you'll come visit, will you?
With her eldest heading off to the stars again, her youngest and grandson saving the world, Gine's life was complete. Now, she had to make a decision. Gine had taken to sleeping a lot after the Cell Games and to fully recharge her batteries before getting back to any sort of training of any kind. But one thing she did know, she never wanted to see Vegeta again if she could help it. One morning, she woke up and found that Grandpa Gohan hadn't been tending to the vegetable garden yet. That was odd. Was he doing his morning stretches? No, he was nowhere to be seen. His walking stick was gone. Hadn't he taken himself out for a walk? She focused on his energy, which had been decreasing a lot lately, and found him not too far away. She could fly there and check on him, but there was no rush. She could walk. It was a nice day anyway. When she got close, she started to recognize the trail. Had she been here before? When she got to a clearing, she understood why she remembered. It was the crater that had once held a Saiyan pod in it, the pod that had brought her and Kakarot to Earth and started her second life here. Gohan turns around and smiles weakly.
Hope I didn't scare you wandering off like that.
Gine shakes her head and sits down at the edge of the crater with her de facto friend and father.
Not at all. I can't remember the last time I was here. Feels like an eternity. Say, what made you come out here?
Gohan turns away and looks to the rising sun.
Just getting one last good look at it. The day where my life changed forever. The day that blessed me with you and young Kakarot, my guardian angels.
Last look? What did he mean by that? Gine pondered this for a moment, but it then clicked. Gine starts to utter, but then stops. What could she say right now? Thank you? Oh, don't be so silly. What was the point? Gohan was a very perceptive individual, and if he felt something was off, an inkling of any kind from anyone about anything, he'd usually be right. Instead of spewing out drivel and nonsensical utterings of being sad, oh don't be sad, she instead just looked to where Gohan was looking, and sat there for a moment. The two of them just gazing at nothing in particular, just taking in the peaceful morning scene. No fighting, no training, no nothing. All they had to do was be. She places a hand on his, a hand which felt just as supple and young as the day she arrived 3 decades ago onto the frail hand of her friend, her father.
If it weren't for you, my life would have been ever so dull. I thought I wanted to live out my life in solitude, but you breaking down my door back then broke down my shell. For the first time, in what seemed like ages, I had a family. Thank you for making an old man very happy.
They share a moment of silence before Gohan gets up shakily.
Now, let's go home. I feel oh so tired.
Later that day, he passed away. The funeral, a very small one with just the Son family present as well as Master Roshi, was a simple affair. Kakarot was incredibly shaken by this, having loved the old man dearly. He hadn't trained or done much of anything in days after his passing. He felt utterly broken. Roshi was as stoic as ever, mourning silently his favourite pupil.
He was one of the most modest people I ever known. I wish I could have learned a thing or two from him. He's the one that brought us all together. We owe our lives to him.
Gine knew this all too well. In fact, she had been present by his bedside right until he drew his last breath. Kakarot had missed it, however, despite sensing his energy disappearing. He had been training on King Kai's planet, and by the time he could get back, it was too late. He cursed himself to the heavens, and no amount of screaming or wailing could bring Gohan back. In that moment, when looking at the simple stone marking his final resting place later on, Gine turned to Kakarot and placed a hand on his.
Kakarot?
He turns to his mother and silently nods.
Okay, I understand, Mom.
She hadn't had to say it. Her son knew, and had kept his promise from before. Since that day he had ceased to be, Gine had been reminded of her own mortality. The buzz of gaining full power Super Saiyan had pushed that thought temporarily out of her mind. The feeling of power, strength and pride had risen to the forefront and made her feel totally invincible. Just what was to be expected for a Saiyan. She had broken down the barriers and shown any Saiyan, regardless of who they were, could achieve anything, no matter what the royal family ever would say. But even that wasn't enough to eschew the sudden awareness of her impending demise. And besides, not a lot of Saiyans got to experience old age for obvious reasons. She got to do so, and now that she was firmly in charge of her own destiny, she wanted to live out her last 2 decades of her prime away from the battlefield. That being said, she wasn't going to be just sitting around the house and doing nothing, moping about being alone. Absolutely not. A week or so later, Gine knocks on the door of Kakarot's house, and a pregnant Chi-Chi answers the door.
Hey, Chi-Chi, is Gohan awake? Yeah, he's awake.
What are you wearing?
Is that?
Sure enough, Gine's clothes were different. Instead of a simple Chinese-style dress that she'd been wearing for pretty much all of her time here on Earth, she was wearing something else. It was still martial arts themed, but now it resembled that of Grandpa Gohan's outfit, only with pink and purple trimming instead of orange. In her own way, she paid tribute to Gohan's legacy. She was not going to while away her days doing nothing. She was going to instead prepare the next generation.
You look so cool.
Chi-Chi gasps in awe. She then calls Gohan down, and the young man also admires Gine in her new attire, and immediately gets what she has in store for him. When Kakarot sees her in that outfit for the first time, he breaks down in tears and needed mother hugs for a while before he calmed down. That's not to say he didn't like it, he was just a little overcome is all. In the years leading up to the Buu saga, Gine spent her days training Gohan and then a young Goten, still in her prime and still fighting fit. At last, she'd found the perfect balance. She didn't have to deny herself her Saiyan instinct for fighting, but she could instead apply it in a way which was much more constructive and helpful for the greater good. As a result, Gohan and Goten became much stronger than they were in the original story. Where was Vegeta in all of this? Well, he kept his distance from Gine, obviously. If they were ever in the same room or area for parties or gatherings, he would avoid her, always. And quite frankly, Gine saw no need to fix things. She had not been the one to instigate this feud, and what the prince had done to her over the years was clearly something truly unforgivable. Kakarot hated Vegeta for what he'd done to his mother, and thusly, it meant that their rivalry was far different from the original. He stuck around because he was useful, but Kakarot did not see him as a friend of any kind. He was not his best buddy at all. Well, okay, Masako, what happens in the Buu saga? Well, the tournament still occurs, but with Gine choosing not to attend since Vegeta was taking part. She could not stand being near him when there was a challenge afoot. He'd be all like, blah blah blah, pride, blah blah, Saiyan Prince, Prince of all Saiyan, blah, blah, blah. What good would it do her aging heart to have to hear him prattle on about pride and stuff? But when things come to the point where Majin Vegeta arrives, she is dragged into it. You see, it was a bad idea for those two to not patch things up. Vegeta had been stewing on this for years, ever since the Cell games, and to not reconcile with Gine was the biggest mistake they all could have done. Granted, they had no idea that Babidi could utilize this ill feeling against them, but still, they should have really put their differences aside. It's Saiyan stubbornness still reigning supreme. Instead of Vegeta being teleported to the stadium, this time he is instead brought to Mount Paozu alone, to Gine's house. Babidi felt it was best to fully gain control of Vegeta and cure that itch of his.
Perhaps with that wench out of the way, he will become fully loyal to me and Majin Buu!
Gine could sense Vegeta outside and felt his ki had changed, but she was not prepared for what she was about to face.
Woman, fight me,
says Majin Vegeta simply. Gine stands there resolute, terrified at the vicious expression on the prince's face. What on earth had happened to him? She tries to keep a cool exterior.
I have nothing to say to you. As far as I'm concerned, you're dead to me. Leave me in peace.
Peace? I've not known peace since the day you rejected me.
Rejected? Oh, Vegeta, are you still upset about that? I never thought you would become so petty in your elder years.
Gine was getting irritated just by looking at him. Vegeta is having none of this. He lets out a scream and powers up to Super Saiyan 2.
The only way I will find true peace is by ending you! You have humiliated me for the last time!
Oh boy, he's serious. Gine responds in kind, having also discovered Super Saiyan 2. You tend to pick these things up with two strong, half-Saiyan burly boys around, even if you're not seeking it out yourself. However, this isn't easy. She had trouble with this form. She couldn't hold on to it for long. No matter how hard she tried, she had finally reached the limit of what her body could do. All this form was good for, really, was to act as material for training. The battle begins, with Vegeta and Gine tussling it out near the resting place of Grandpa Gohan. In one giant roar, Vegeta blasts Gine back, and she gets flung backwards and creates a crater in the spot where Gohan had been buried. This act was the last straw. Gohan's memory had been tarnished. She lets out a primal scream, which even creeps out Majin Vegeta's base instincts. This was then complemented by a huge surge of ki, which dominated the scene and inferno of ki could be seen for miles around. This was so big, in fact, it heralded a sudden arrival. Raditz had arrived. He had felt his mother's ki burning brightly, sensed that she might be in danger. She was.
Why am I not surprised? Haven't you caused enough trouble? This is none of your concern, scum. Be gone before I put you in your place.
Raditz stands there silently, not moving, and then Kakarot arrives, having been held back by Barbody's magical influence. That is until Guinea had just roared out, and Kakarot limit braked his way out of there. He looks daggers at Vegeta.
Raditz, get Mom out of here. I will deal with this pest myself.
Is that any way to say hello to your bro?
Raditz, now's not the time.
This was serious, Raditz thought. With that, much like what he did in the Cell Saga, Raditz instant transmissions out of there with Guinea away from the scene and up to Korin's tower to grab some sensu. For the rest of the saga, Guinea is kept away from the fight by Raditz, and this time, she's actually okay with this. Having seen Vegeta act so cruelly, and realizing that this time she could not answer the call herself to action as readily as before, she sort of accepted that this fight was not something she could actually give her all in. Her boys will take care of the business for their old mama. Not to say that she was giving up or anything, but she knew her limits. Watching from Korin's tower, Guinea could sense everything going on, including eventually witnessing the pink ki descend to Earth and do its horrific thing to the population, cursing her own weakness for not being able to help.
Look, the important thing is to survive and not let that thing win,
says a stoic Yajirobe. Guinea was surprised to hear this one say that kind of thing, but he was right. All she could do was just survive. She hated this feeling though. It was weird to not be helping out, but at the same time, it was awesome to see what her descendants were capable of. When it came to Vegeta's atonement, Guinea recognized it and could sense that the prince's malicious feelings towards her were melting away as he performed his final explosion. It was like that technique was the ultimate feeling of catharsis for him. He needed to not only stop Boo, but also get that off his chest. In the end, it's not Vegeta that saves the day for everyone, but the fusion of Ultimate Gohan and Kakarot into the fusion that's known as Gokoroto. This powerful fusion, bolstered by a stronger Gohan, is more than enough to erase Boo from existence before he could blow up the planet. You know, in a smaller form and thusly save the world. There was much that needed to be fixed though, but at least there was a planet to fix. The now defused Kakarot and Gohan come to Korin's tower to collect her, and the three of them embrace, now hoping that things would be now a little quieter. Well, they were. Sort of. As Guinea got older, she became a bit more of a recluse. She loved her family dearly, but she tended to avoid most gatherings as that really wasn't her style anymore. One event did convince her to change her mind though, and it was the party for Bulma's birthday, and before Beerus arrived. Vegeta took Guinea aside and wished to fully express his regret for causing all this hurt for her over the years. Since being back on Earth and getting a second chance at life here, he had realized that what he had done was not something that a prince of all Saiyans should be doing. This still sounded sort of overblown and pompous, but for Vegeta, it was a pretty big step down. And when the time came to perform the ritual to bring forth Kakarot's red powers, Guinea stepped up in place of Videl, keeping her secret intact obviously, and the fight carried on like before. With Pan then arriving, Guinea was pleased that she got to live long enough to see her great-grandchild. Now, does she aid them in the Tournament of Power, Guinea? No, Kakarot chose not to ask her, still upholding his promise to not drag her into such matters anymore. Having said that though, she did push back a little bit, jokingly, and said she would have helped if nobody else stepped in.
I'm still your mother, Kakarot, and mothers have to help clean up their children's messes.
She was actually really angry at Kakarot actually endangering the entire universe, but she's only being jovial now because it turned out okay. Fast forward to the days of age 784, the end of Z. Guinea looked at herself in the mirror one morning, and what she saw was still something she was struggling to get used to. Her hair had quickly changed from its once jet black shade to a much more silvery colour. It had happened. She'd become an old woman. She had managed to do what few Saiyans do and live a good long life. She could feel that her time was fast approaching, and she could no longer go Super Saiyan even, but she had long accepted this fact. All she had to do now was be happy and cheer her family on. That's what she was doing, in fact. She was present at the World Martial Arts Tournament, which saw Pan doing a fantastic job. Her hair that day actually looked very much like her great-grandmother's, only black and more untidy. Now, Guinea's not frail or anything, she's still quite powerful, you know, especially for an elderly woman, but she chose to live a quiet existence, and this trip out to sea fighting games very different to what she would usually do these days. But she did enjoy it. She especially enjoyed seeing Kakarot and Pan sparring on the sidelines, the former promising to train their granddaughter. The fact that she looked a little bit like her sort of made things poetic in a way. She had taken care of Kakarot all her life, and now Kakarot was taking care of New Life too, once more. And that's where we end the story. So what did you guys think? Do you think Guinea got the story she deserved? Do you feel it covered everything it should? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later.